The Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below. And we are back, friends. Welcome. Welcome back to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. I am your host, Grant Lavac, and if you've found this channel intentionally, then like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what's not. So welcome. We got some friends in the house. Jimmy, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out of your cold Melbourne evening to join. Jasmine, fellow Patreon member along with Jimmy. Thank you, Jasmine, for joining. Erin, so good to see you. Thank you for joining. We have Blue Crayon 71. Welcome. Thanks for joining wherever you are. Short Order Cook 1. It's good to see you as well. And we have Mark Leonard joining. So thank you all for taking some time out of your evening, your morning, your midday, your graveyard shift, wherever you are. Michael from Ireland, welcome. I'm not going to try and do an Irish accent because I'll just completely butcher it. But yes, to share Jimmy's sentiments, hit that like button, folks. If you want to see the Unexplained Rundown continue to grow, give it one of these, like, share, subscribe, share your comments in the for this video, and let me know what you think of the documents that we're covering off on in tonight's episode. If you want to go above and beyond the like, share, subscribe, you can check out some of the membership options for Patreon and YouTube. You can support the channel for a couple of bucks a month. Your support will go a long way and help with offset some of the costs that are associated with running this show, because it's certainly not cheap with the streaming software and Google Drive storage and getting back FOIA requests. Sometimes you have to pay for them if they're pretty significant. So feel free to check those out in the show notes below if you're interested. So folks, this is going to be a deep dive session. So be prepared to set your expectations. This is going to be a content heavy or document heavy show. So if you need to step away, I'm not too sure how long it will take to get through these documents, but if you need to step away, I completely understand. It is late in the evening on a Wednesday night in Australia on the East Coast, so you can always watch this on demand if you want. Tonight's show is all about the recent revelation that I was able to bring to light through the release of a key FOIA document. It's all about the revelation of AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group, also known as the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, which Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick introduced to the world on the 31st of May last year at NASA's public hearing on UAP when he was presenting to the independent study team. So we're going to not only do a deep dive of the latest FOIA document that gives us some great information about what was discussed at this Five Eyes inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group meeting, and what sort of engagement we can expect across the Five Eyes going forward. But what I thought I would do for those that may not have a frame of reference of where we've come from and how we got to this point, I thought I would do, as part of my deep dive this evening, a chronological timeline. So going through a comprehensive timeline of events that are FOIA related, announcements, articles, dating back really from when Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick made that announcement at NASA's public meeting on UAP on 31st of May of 2023, leading up to and slightly beyond this FOIA release, which told us all about the Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group. So a few other folks that are here. Jimmy likes deep dives. I'm pleased to hear it, Jimmy, because you're in for a treat tonight. Mark, welcome, my friend from Bris Vegas. Always good to see you. So thanks for joining. So let's get into it, friends. We'll start with the 26th of July of 2022. Why is that date significant? So before that date, earlier in that month of July 2022, I reached out to the current Australian Minister for Defence and current Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles to ask him or to consider implementing a parliamentary inquiry on UAP in an Australian context. And I sent email after email because I wasn't getting a response, but I did eventually get a response. And so this is the document that I received from the Royal Australian Air Force, who's always been historically the lead on the the UAP topic in Australia. So this was the email that I received on the 22nd. I should say it was a letter that was sent to me as a PDF and an email on the 26th of July of 2022. Now, I won't read through the entire response, but obviously it was in response to my inquiry or request for open public parliamentary hearings on UAP. And so essentially they were throwing cold water over my request, over the nature of my inquiries. And in my email to them, I asked, Australia is an important ally to the United States, who's a Five Eyes partner. Our Five Eyes allies are taking the topic seriously, obviously leading the charge is the United States. What is Australia going to do about the national security threats and safety of flight risk that UAP pose? So this was the response that I received from R.J. Denny, who was at the time the Air Vice Marshal or head of Air Force capability. And I think this is just a nice contrast, the juxtaposition of what we're going to be covering off on today. He states in his letter, the Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprising of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. Air Force, being Royal Australian Air Force, does not lead on these forums. Air Force does not consider this the appropriate platform to discuss the topic of UAP or UFO. A big ba-bow on that one, because less than a year later, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick would announce this to the world at NASA's public meeting on UAP with the independent study team.
We have time for one last question.
Sean, you recommended foreign partnership with NASA. I'm curious, especially given your MAT, have you, as AARO, partnered with international agencies, and is there ways for reporting to your?
So that's a great question. I want to expound on that just a little bit. So I have just held our first Five Eyes forum on this subject last week, I think it was, or earlier this week. I don't know. Dan was there, and we have, we've entered into discussions with our partners on data sharing. How do they do reporting? What kind of analysis can they help us with? What kind of calibration can they help us with? What can we help them with? And we're establishing all of that right now. And they're going to end up, sending their information and data to us to feed into the process that we've laid out for how we're going to do all of this. Beyond that, I have not had either the time or the bandwidth to do, and that's why I would look to NASA to expand the scientific and academic relationships that they have across all of our allies and partners on how can we bring them into the fold. That's where I think there's a lot of benefit to NASA taking lead on that.
Great. Thank you. But one just clarifications for people who don't know, what are the Five Eyes?
Oh, I'm sorry. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Five Eyes, those are that's the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. So those are the 5 partners.
Terrific. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. So that was former director Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick on the 31st of May of last year, saying that AARO is fulfilling its congressional mandate. The legislation states that the investigatory office, AARO, has a duty to coordinate with allies and international partners in the United States to better understand the extent and nature of UAP. So Dr. Kirkpatrick was doing what AARO was asked to do. now, and Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Well, a bit of egg on the face there of RJ Denny saying that Five Eyes is probably not the appropriate platform, when in actuality it absolutely was. So after that revelation was made, that pricked up my ears and the ears of many other researchers around the globe across the Five Eyes. We wanted to learn more about that engagement, that forum that AARO led and invited its Five Eyes partners, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, to share what it knows on UAP, have the US share data and intelligence with it. So that was the announcement and revelation that came on the 31st of May of last year. So that triggered a flurry of emails and inquiries from me locally and abroad to try and gather more information about that Five Eyes forum on UAP. So the day after that announcement, that was the 31st of May, on the 1st of June, I reached out to the Australian Department of Defence media team to try and solicit more information about that Five Eyes forum on UAP that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick had announced the day prior. And I won't read through the entire email, but essentially the crux of my email was planting the seed that earlier today, the 31st of May, that was in the US, so it was actually the 1st of June in Australia, basically planting the seed of what had just transpired with Dr. Kirkpatrick's announcement at NASA's public hearing. I even included for the Australian Department of Defence media team links to the transcript of the meeting and the specific, two articles, I should say, one that was in the debrief that reported on it, and on NASA's engagement on the topic, and one local story with the ABC. So the question that I asked was of defence media was, considering the previous positions of and statements from the Royal Australian Air Force, again, it's saying less than a year before that, Five Eyes is not the appropriate platform for UAP to be discussed. So considering the previous positions of and statements from the Royal Australian Air Force, Australian Department of Defence, and the Honourable Richard Marles, Minister for Defence, could you kindly provide comment on the Australian Department of Defence's involvement / participation in the aforementioned Five Eyes Forum? That's the only terminology that we were given. Those were Dr. Kirkpatrick's words specifically in that clip. He called it a Five Eyes Forum on unidentified anomalous phenomena, and confirm which defence services were represented at the forum. So the day that announcement was made, I reached out to the Australian Department of Defence media team to press them on Australia's engagement. Now, that very same day, I also submitted a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA request in Australia, requesting, I'll pull this up for you so you can see what it looks like. This was the email that I had sent to the, again, I won't read through the entire thing. The crux of it is quite comparable with the email request that I sent to the Defence Media Team, which was the email you just saw prior to this one, basically saying the same thing. AARO had just, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick had just announced this Five Eyes Forum on UAP. I even included, a tweet that I'd put out which had a clip, that clip that you just saw. I included a local article from the ABC. And so my request was specifically, a little bit hard to see on the screen, so I'll just read it out for you. I kindly request copies of Australian Department of Defence emails, including supporting file attachments, meeting agendas, attendee list, meeting documents, briefing documents, talking points, reports, assessments, and slide deck presentations pertaining to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, facilitated by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick of the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in May 2023. Now, it was probably a little bit messy, the nature of that request, but I was working on the assumption that whoever represented Australia at that Five Eyes Forum would more than likely have been expected to present, say some words. So they may have prepared some talking points. If there was more than one individual, there should have been a list of attendees on Australia's side, a meeting schedule that maybe was prepared on the Australian Department of Defence side. So that's the request that I submitted the same day as I submitted that email off to the Australian Department of Defence media team. Now we jump forward to the next day. So now we're the 2nd of June of 2023. This was an email that I had sent this one was to Susan Goff. So this was an email I sent on Friday, the 2nd of June, so the day after. Comment requested, Five Eyes Forum on Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. Greetings, Ms. Goff. I hope this email finds you well. Yesterday, Director of AARO basically laying out what I had just done for my correspondence with the Australian FOIA request and the Defence media team, basically quoting verbatim what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick had stated at that NASA public hearing. I even included a timestamp for Susan Goff's benefit. And my question basically was, following Dr. Kirkpatrick's statement pertaining to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, could you kindly comment on the Five Eyes members represented at the Five Eyes Forum and confirm which of the respective agencies, defense and or intelligence services, were in attendance? Many thanks. Look forward to your response. So that was on the 2nd of June. A couple of days go by, no response. So we come to the 5th of June, a few days after that email. And let me pull up the right document here. I decided to submit a FOIA request to NASA because you might have noticed that in that statement that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick made in that clip, he mentioned that Dan was there at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Now, he was referring to Dan Evans, who was a member of NASA's UAP independent study team. So Dan Evans, NASA, that's an agency that is not exempt from FOIA. Obviously, I can submit FOIA request. So that's exactly what I did. So on the 5th of June, the date you can see that's bold, this is the request that I submitted to NASA via FOIA. I requested copies of emails, including supporting file attachments, sent from to CC'd on behalf of Dr. Daniel Evans, Assistant Deputy Associate Administrator for Research, for the period 1 April 2023 to 31 May 2023 inclusive. So I wanted to give myself a bit of a buffer, not knowing the exact date of the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So I wanted to see if I could capture any correspondence in the month prior to that meeting and in the days following that contain any of the following keywords: Five Eyes, FEEY, which is the acronym used for Five Eyes, Forum, Five Eyes Forum, as well as all meeting agendas, attendee lists, talking points, and meeting documents. Now, I didn't use any other search words because those words were specifically what Dr. Kirkpatrick used. Those were the words that he spoke in that statement, that video, the clip that you saw before. So that was the request that I submitted. Now, that was on the 5th of June. Now, a couple of days after that, and again, we're going all in chronological order. So we're going to, obviously, responses will come to these emails and FOIA requests as we progress through this timeline. But should fast forward to a couple of days prior. So now on the 7th of June, and the media starts to pick up on Dr. Kirkpatrick's statements that there was a Five Eyes Forum on UAP, starting with CTV News out of Canada. Now, there's a wonderful journalist by the name of Daniel Otis, who I would encourage you to follow on Twitter or have a look at CTV News' website. He's doing some really wonderful reporting on UAP in a Canadian context. And so he put out a story, an article on the 7th of June, obviously Australia time, so 6 in Canada. Canadian military joined recent US forum on UFOs, Pentagon trying to identify metallic orbs. So this was the first news article that had come out on the topic. And basically, Daniel Otis was looking at this from a Canadian perspective. So the first paragraph is really the key one. The Canadian military has confirmed it participated in a May 2023 forum for Five Eyes intelligence partners that was held by the director of the Pentagon's UFO research program. And they didn't state specifically who had, let me get rid of this ad. I can't scroll here. You know what? I'm just going to refresh, see if that comes up. So it doesn't state specifically who had attended, but there is mention of which department. Let me get rid of this. It says, there we go. So I'll read this paragraph. So while it is unclear which parts of the Canadian military participated in the May Forum, a previous February 2022 meeting with Pentagon UAP officials included members of the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Canadian Forces Intelligence Command. Former Canadian Defence Minister Heric Chazard also received a UAP briefing from his staff in May 2021. So there had been some previous engagement between the United States and Canada. But again, not confirming specifically who attended this Five Eyes Forum on UAP from Canada's side. So again, that was the first reporting that had come out on the Five Eyes Forum on UAP following Dr. Kirkpatrick's statements at NASA's public meeting on UAP. So that was on the 7th of June. Now, fast forward a little over a week later, and I got an email back from Susan Goff. So I sent her an email on the 2nd of June. So almost 2 weeks later, I received this response. Grant, I don't have anything for you beyond Dr. Kirkpatrick's remarks. I refer you to each Five Eye partner regarding their attendance at the forum. AARO is committed to working with our allies and partners in an open sharing environment to identify and resolve UAP sightings. So sadly, no cigar from Susan Goff. She was not going to reveal any information pertaining to your participation from any of the Five Eyes members. So that was on the 15th of June. That same day, wonderful article comes out from Defense Scoop from Brandy Vincent. She was the second outlet to report on the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Let me just pull this up here so we've got it. Article titled Five Eyes Alliance remains tight-lipped on how it's collaborating on uncovering UAPs. Defense Scoop asked government media officials from all the nations to provide more details in the wake of a recent meeting held at the Pentagon. So Brandy Vincent's been doing some wonderful work, not just on UAP, but other topics as well. And basically, she was able to report this information. Let me just pull it up here. Okay. Spokespersons from the US and UK did not reply with answers before publication, though a Pentagon official acknowledged receipt of the questions. So she received a response from New Zealand. A New Zealand Defence Force representative based in Washington, DC, attended the briefing. That was, that's in quotation, so that's obviously directly from New Zealand. That Kirkpatrick hosted. A spokesperson from the nation's government said, beyond that, they only added, for more information, you will need to contact the US authorities. Little bit of a confusing message there, because you just saw from that response from Susan Goff that she was saying, reach out to each respective country. They will be responsible for revealing more information. Of the alliance members, Canada provided the longest response to inquiries regarding the Five Eyes Forum. The Canadian Armed Forces, CAF, accounted for the primary representation of that nation, a spokesperson said. The article goes on to say, meanwhile, so she didn't hear from the UK. They went completely silent on Brandy Vincent. Meanwhile, a spokesperson from Australia did not confirm whether a representative from their nation attended the UAP meeting, and their response took a different direction entirely. The direct response that Brandy Vincent received to her inquiries directed to the Australian Department of Defence was, the Australian Department of Defence does not have a protocol for reporting a recording of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, or unidentified flying objects, UFO, the official told Defence Scoop in an email. Now, that is the same line from the Australian Department of Defence that I've gotten time and time again when I get back a FOIA response, a response from Defence Media, a response from Richard Miles. You'll see that time and time again in correspondence, and I've shown that in previous episodes that I've done on the Unexplained Rundown. So we're really not getting any information. Daniel Otis, Brandy Vincent, they're doing their due diligence. They're not getting really anything from those countries other than New Zealand and Canada. And Australia's kind of just, providing a non-answer completely, which is not unusual for Australia. So that was on the 15th of June. So let's now fast forward a couple of days to the 20th of June of last year. And this was a question on notice. And for those that don't know, questions on notice. So in Australia, the only Australian senator to date that has taken the topic of UAP seriously and had the courage and gumption to ask questions in Parliament about UAP in an Australian context is a gentleman by the name of Senator Peter Whish-Wilson. He's the Greens senator for Tasmania. And he had raised the issue of UAP at a number of Senate estimates hearings, kind of like budget estimates or budget oversight hearings. He'd first asked questions of the then Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Mel Hupfield, on the 27th of October of 2021. And then he had asked the next in line, or the what they call it, the Chief of Air Force that followed Mel Hupfield. His name was Air Marshal Robert Chipman. He's recently left his position of Chief of Air Force. That position is now held by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Chappell. And we will talk more about that in a future episode. So Senator Whish-Wilson asked questions of Air Marshal Robert Chipman in February of 2023, in the days following the aftermath of the Chinese spy balloon shoot down on those 3 still unidentified aerial objects. And then Senator Whish-Wilson asked Air Marshal Robert Chipman at a Senate estimates hearing later that very same year in November 2023. So this was on the 20th of June of 2023. So this is already after Senator Whish-Wilson has asked questions of both of these Chief of Air Forces in Parliament. This was questions on notice. So for those that haven't watched any of the Senate estimates hearings where Senator Whish-Wilson has asked questions, you can find those on my channel. He was only given around about 8 to 10 minutes of time to ask questions because he's a participating member of the Senate Estimates for Defense, Foreign Affairs and Trade. He's not a permanent member, so he's only afforded a very small amount of time by the Greens membership of the committee. So if he doesn't get all of his questions asked during that allocated 8 to 10 minutes, he'll submit some follow-up questions in writing, which are referred to as questions on notice. And so this was a question on notice, question number 91, that he submitted on the 20th of June of 2023 to the Department of Defense. The question was, there was actually a few questions that he asked, but one of them was, did Australia attend the recent Five Eyes meeting held in May 2023? If so, did it attend the US briefing on UAPs? So I had apprised Senator Whish-Wilson of the fact that Dr. Kirkpatrick had announced this Five Eyes Forum on UAP at this NASA public meeting on the 31st of May. And I was able to propose a number of questions to Senator Whish-Wilson, which he could consider submitting as questions on notice. And to my surprise and delight, he did exactly that. This was the question that he asked the Australian Department of Defense about Australia's attendance representation at the Five Eyes Forum. That was on the 20th of June. Now we're going to get to the response that he received the following month. So that was the 20th of June. Let's now fast forward to the next day, the 21st of June of 2023. The petition, the UAP petition that I had submitted to the Australian House of Representatives concluded on this day, on the 21st of June it closed. And I won't read the entire position, but I was very grateful that we were able to secure 759 signatures. So 758 of my fellow Aussies thought that this was a petition worth taking seriously, and they signed their name to it. And the basic petition request was, we asked the House of Representatives to conduct a formal review of unidentified anomalous phenomena and consider the establishment of an investigative body to assess the potential national security threats and safety of flight risks that UAP pose. Because the Royal Australian Air Force, for those that don't know, it has a very long history of investigating the UAP topic, really almost as long as the United States, dating back to the early 50s through to the mid-1990s, when in 1996, the Royal Australian Air Force wiped its hands and said, move along, folks, nothing to see here. It formally concluded it ceased all of its ongoing investigations into UAP, or what it referred to as unusual aerial sightings, UAS for short, reported by members of the Australian Defence Force. It wrapped up, it packed up shop and said, move along, folks, nothing to see here. So the Australian Department of Defence, and specifically the Royal Australian Air Force, has not completed a formal review of its position on UAP since 1996. And so my petition was a request to have the Australian government force the Australian Department of Defence to do exactly that, conduct a formal review of its current position and assess the national security threats and safety of flight risks that UAP pose. Now, I even, in the petition reason, I kind of just gave some background information. I don't believe I even alluded to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP here, but basically just highlighted that, our US ally, Five Eyes partner, and AUKUS partner is taking the topic of UAP very seriously. Australia should be doing exactly the same thing. Now, I display this petition because we're going to come to the response that it received in the months shortly thereafter. So that was the 21st of June. That same day, I submitted an email to the current Minister for Defence, Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, requesting some information following on from the announcement, only a week or so prior, I should say a month prior, from Dr. Kirkpatrick about the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Now, unfortunately, the text is a little small here, so I'm just going to read you basically what I've highlighted. These were the questions that I asked the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, to answer. Why is Australia not publicly taking the issue of UAP seriously when our US ally is and has publicly stated that UAP is a global issue requiring global cooperation and collaboration, which they've done? As the Australian Minister of Defence and Deputy Prime Minister, in what capacity have you been briefed on the UAP issue to date? I even included then obviously a time stamp for where Dr. Kirkpatrick made those remarks at NASA's public meeting. So on consideration of the above statement made by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, what was the extent of Australia's involvement in the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, and who from Australia was represented? Now, remember, this was an email that I submitted to the Defence Minister, Richard Marles. I didn't submit it to the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Defence Space Command. I submitted it to the Defence Minister. And my final question was pertaining to the Five Eyes Foreign Material Program that Larry Maguire documented in a letter. We won't talk about that in this episode today. But the key question is there, I asked, well, what was Australia's involvement in the Five Eyes Forum on UAP? Because I wasn't getting much traction with my inquiries to media or Susan Gough, the Defence Media Team, or Susan Gough. Less than 10 days later, I receive a response to that inquiry directed to the Minister for Defence, Richard Marles. And the response comes from, again, our good friends at the Royal Australian Air Force, much like the letter you saw me play at the very start that I received on, when was it, the 26th of July of 2022. Remember, Royal Australian Air Force saying, no, Five Eyes is not the appropriate platform for UAP to be discussed. Well, weren't they wrong? So this was the response letter that I received specifically to that email to Richard Marles on Australia's position on UAP. And specifically, this is the key one. Air Force, being the Royal Australian Air Force, did not attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So someone within the Royal Australian Air Force has obviously done their due diligence, asked around, tried to find out more about this Five Eyes Forum on UAP, because again, I included the time code in my email. So I assume that someone had looked at that video and heard Dr. Kirkpatrick's statements and asked around internally. That's my assumption anyway. So the Royal Australian Air Force is saying categorically that it did not attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Now, you'll note that wasn't the question that I asked. I didn't ask, did RAAF attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP? I said, what was the, basically, what was Australia's involvement? Who or which agency from Australia attended? But at least we're getting some declarative statement from the Air Force saying that it did not attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So at least we had something on that front. So let's then fast forward a couple days later to the 1st of July. Now, again, I'm doing this deliberately, all in chronological order. So those that maybe aren't as well versed on the history of everything that's led up to this revelation of the Five Eyes UAP Caucus working group, you've got a frame of reference for where we've come from and where we're going and how we got there. So this was a US FOIA, this was, let me just have a look at what this one was. Make sure I've got the right one here. 1st of July. Not sure if I'm looking at the right one here. Anyway, we'll go with this one. So I submitted. Actually, you know what? Make sure. No, that is the wrong one. Let's come back to that one. I'm going to find the right one. Apologies, folks. It's 10. Got the wrong one. There we go. This is the right one. So, so on the 1st of July, I submitted a US FOIA request. Now, one thing that's good for you to note, one of the nice things about the United States Freedom of Information Act is you actually don't need to be a US citizen. You're not prohibited from submitting FOIA requests if you're not a US not a US citizen. So if you have an interest in submitting a US Freedom of Information Act request, you can submit one if you so desire. I'll just show short order Cook's one comments. The last paragraph from the Air Force letter was interesting, but quite a snub that they declined to answer any more of your questions on the matter. And often that's the kind of responses. They're very to the point. They're very short and sweet, and they often don't even answer the question that is being asked. And initially I was very frustrated with those sort of responses, but now I've come to accept it. So this was the request that I submitted to the Pentagon. I kindly request copies of Pentagon visitor registration records submitted by and/or on behalf of visitor sponsor of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, that include visit dates to the Pentagon between the 22nd of May and 31st of May 2023. So I took a gamble based on what Dr. Kirkpatrick said, and I wanted to see if I could get copies of the visitor registration records for folks that attended that Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Bit of a long shot because privacy information, it probably wouldn't have revealed anything, but I thought I would submit one nonetheless. So that was on the 1st of July. Fast forward 2 days later to the 3rd of July. And see if I can bring this up. This one here. And this was directed to, this was directed to an email that I directed to the Australian Signals Directorate. So I thought, well, the Five Eyes being an intelligence alliance, a long-standing intelligence alliance, they share signals intelligence. Australia has the Australian Signals Directorate, maybe they were the ones that were invited to participate in the Five Eyes Forum. So I thought I would reach out to the ASD media team and see if they would be prepared to comment. Again, including a time code so they could watch Dr. Kirkpatrick's statements specifically, and included a reference to an article that was done by the ABC in Australia on NASA's public meeting. Much like I asked the defence media team, I asked the same question of the Australian Signals Directorate media team. Could you kindly provide comment and confirm the Australian Signals Directorate was represented at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP? So again, trying to reach out crosses, dot the I's and cross the T's, and try and follow up as many possible avenues as I could just to get some more information. Like we had just got there from the Royal Australian Air Force, their response that the Air Force did not attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Doesn't give us any more information, but at least we can cross the RAAF off the list. So that was on the 3rd of July. A week later, 10th of July. And if you have questions and comments as we go through, folks, you're welcome to put them in the chat. We're leading up to, obviously, this US FOIA revelation of the Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group. So let's come to the next document, which is 12, this one here. There we go. So I submitted a FOIA request on... When was this submitted? Okay, I actually submitted on the 1st of June, and this is what I was requesting. I missed this one, so this was going back to the previous month, the 1st of June. I submitted a FOIA request requesting copies of Australian... Oh, no, sorry, I did. I showed you the email of the submission. So this was the response, the statement of reasons response that I got. So again, reminding you that my request was for copies of Australian Department of Defence emails, including supporting file attachments, meeting agendas, 10-day list, meeting documents, briefing documents, talking points, reports, assessments, slide deck presentations pertaining to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. You remember that email you saw, I submitted it. Now, the response came back, no documents were identified as falling within the scope of the request, which is very interesting, and you will find out a little later on. So, no cigar there. That was the no documents response that I received on the 10th of July. Now, let's fast forward another week. We're now at the 17th of July. And I received, I'm not permitted to show this email because it's from the Australian Signals Directorate, but I received a response from the Australian Signals Directorate basically saying not for comment, not for attribution. It was a non-answer, basically. There was nothing in their response. So that was another no cigar, bit of a donut effort there. Didn't get any information from the Australian Signals Directorate. Nothing of value, basically. And that was on the 17th of July. So kind of keep the ball rolling. I thought, well, got to keep at it to see if we can, try and get breadcrumbs of information. So submitted a, this was, I did not submitted, but this on the 19th of July, Senator Wish Wilson, who submitted, remember that question on notice on the 20th of June, did Australia attend the United States forum on UAP? If so, did it attend a briefing on UAPs? A response came back from the Australian Department of Defence. And this was on the 19th of July. So remember, this is the question that Senator Wish Wilson asked, did Australia attend the recent Five Eyes meeting held in May 2023? If so, did it attend the US briefings on UAPs? Pretty straightforward question. US briefing on UAPs. Did Australia attend this Five Eyes meeting held in May? The response on the 19th of July of 2023, Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAPs. So at the time when this information was available, it was a true what the fuck moment for me, and I imagine many others, thinking well, if what this is true, and if this is an accurate statement from the Australian Department of Defence, why on earth would Australia not attend a Five Eyes intelligence briefing, a Five Eyes briefing on UAP, which our US ally and Five Eyes partner has stated UAP is a global issue and it is a national security threat and safety of flyers? Why would Australia not attend a United States-led briefing on UAPs? We are lockstep with the United States on almost every defense initiative, but we're not walking alongside them on UAP. Why would we not participate or accept an invitation to attend a briefing and hear our US brothers and sisters out on what's keeping them up at night pertaining to UAP? So that caused quite a lot of frustration and concern, and begged a lot more questions than answers. So that was on the 19th of July. Let's fast forward to the 28th of August. Now this is the NASA FOIA response that I got back. So let me pull this up for you. And again, apologies, I've got so many documents here, folks, that I'm having to work my way through. So let me close out a few of these. There we go. All right, so let me pull this one up for you. No, it's not that one. Oops, is it that one? Sorry, guys. There we go. That is the one that I'm after. All right, so let's show this on screen. And Aaron, I think we were there at the briefing. You're absolutely correct. And documents would reveal that in the months thereafter. So 19th of July, Australia saying, no, we didn't attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. They would sing a very different song only a couple of months later. So this was the FOIA request that I submitted to NASA on the 5th of June. Remember, asking for copies of emails for Dan Evans, who attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. And to my surprise and delight, I got a response. And there were 3 pages that were released in part. Some information was redacted to protect privacy information. And 4 pages were not provided, and they were referred to another entity. So that's pretty interesting. They were referred to 3 pages in part, and 4 pages in full were referred to the office under the Secretary of Defense, OUSD. Now, NASA had obviously seen some of the information in the emails that I was requesting for Dan Evans, and it needed to get the okay. It needed to get approval, basically, from AARO, from the OUSD. So there are some documents that were completely redacted, and I had to wait to hear from OUSD, basically. But NASA was able to share with me some of the information that was in the email. And it was an email from Dan Evans to, my assumption is, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, talking about the Five Eyes Forum. So let me go to the first email, which is, which one is it? The 18th of May. This is from a gentleman by the name of Mark McInerney, who we now know is the NASA's director of UAP research. And Dan Evans is cross-copied in on the email that Mark is sending to, presumably, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, this is the first document that was to come out that actually revealed Mark McInerney's identity. So before any other documents, good morning, this is from Mark. I do not have Pentagon access ready to provide required info as needed. So this tells us that not only was Dan Evans in attendance at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, because Dr. Kirkpatrick said he was, but we also know that Mark McInerney, who was announced as NASA's director of UAP research, was also in attendance. So that was a nice little Easter egg. Now, the email from Dan to Mark, obviously in response, and presumably to Dr. Kirkpatrick and a few others, was saying, oh, I don't have Pentagon access either. Could you please add me as well? And then there was some information that was referred to OUSD. Obviously, AARO has to clear it. They haven't cleared it as of yet, and I'm hoping that they will. Again, next email, 19th of May, from Daniel Evans to presumably Kirkpatrick. Hi, possibly Sean. I received and filled out the Pentagon visitor form, and my SSO is going to send over my clearances. So it's obviously indicating that there's going to be some classified information discussed at the briefing. Redacted. We have to do this manually as NASA does not have redacted. Thanks, Dan. Same day, another email from Dan. Obviously, this was what's redacted here is possibly the correspondence, the reply from Kirkpatrick to Dan. Dan's then replying to that, saying, thanks, maybe Sean, not sure. Is it the same width as this one? Maybe it's a little bit longer, or that could be Mark, or so I'm speculating. I'm not expected. I imagine this is to Sean. Thanks, possibly Sean. I'm not expected to speak, am I? Being speak at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Hope not. I'm slammed with our major 31 May meeting coming up. No specific talking points from me. By the way, my redacted, we should be good to go, from Dan. And then a response, obviously, to that, presumably from Sean Kirkpatrick, redacted. Dan Evans' response, thanks, Sean. I presume, yes, I can say a few words. So Sean had obviously pressed him to talk at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Why is that significant? It means that, well, if Dan Evans had prepared some remarks, some talking points that he was going to read from at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, that is FOIAable. So I could go after it. So that was a very interesting email exchange that was released as a result of that NASA FOIA request that I had submitted shortly after the announcement of the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Now, that was on the 28th of August that I got that response. Let's fast forward to the 11th of September. So only almost 2 weeks later, and we have, I sent a follow-up email to the defense media team because they never responded to me. They never responded to my initial one, can you comment on Australia's attendance at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP? No response. So following the response from the Australian Department of Defence to Senator Whish-Wilson's questions on notice saying that Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAPs and me going WTF, I sent an email to the defence media team saying, when asked if Australia attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, the Australian Department of Defence made the following admission. Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAPs. On consideration of the above statement, could you kindly provide comment on the following? Did the Australian Department of Defence receive an invitation from the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP in May? Because again, we're working off the assumption that what the Australian Department of Defence responded to Senator Whish-Wilson was truthful and was accurate, that Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAPs. If yes, to question number one, why did the Australian Department of Defence decide that Australia, a Five Eyes member country, not attend AARO's Five Eyes Forum meeting briefing on UAP to better understand the potential national security threats and safety of flight risks that UAP pose, when only back in February 2023, Chief of Air Force Air Marshal Robert Chipman publicly stated that the Royal Australian Air Force sought information and a briefing from the US via the air attaché in Washington, D.C. on the shoot down of the Chinese spy balloon and 3 unidentified aerial objects to better understand their source identity and any learnings from the United States response. Completely hypocritical. Australia, the Chief of Air Force is wanting to know we better learn a few things from the US's response to the Chinese balloon and those 3 unidentified aerial objects, because they represent a national security threat and safety of flight risk. But don't worry about UAPs. We won't bother going to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, even though they represent the exact same national security threat and safety of flight risk as the Chinese spy balloon and 3 unidentified aerial objects. Complete hypocrisy, right? Number 3, if the Australian Department of Defence did not receive an invitation to attend AARO's Five Eyes Forum meeting briefing on UAP, is the Australian Department of Defence admission that Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAPs representative of non-attendance by the Australian Department of Defence only, or the Australian government more broadly? Because it wasn't entirely clear in their response. So that was the email that I had sent to the Defence Media team on the 11th of September. The very next day, I receive a response, to my surprise. And what was the response? This sounds familiar. Dear Grant, the Department of Defence does not have a protocol for reporting or recording of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, or unidentified flying objects. A carbon copy of what they had provided to Brandy Vincent that she reported on, when was it? On the 15th of June. So we're now a couple of months down the road, and still the Australian Defence media team is not changing its tune. It is still very cagey on Australia's participation, even after Australian Department of Defence is saying, no, we didn't attend. And I completely agree with you, Jimmy. What a load of BS. If you've just joined us, Carl Extra, thanks for joining. Who's Mark McInerney? He is, and Wixie's indicated there, NASA's director of UAP research. So he is kind of like the liaison officer with AARO, as well as NASA's director of UAP research. So yes, very true, Wixie. So far, all we're getting from the Australian Department of Defence is nothing to see here, folks. Australia is in deep with UAP, and the truth has to come out. And you are not wrong there, my friend. And we'll reveal that as we go through. So that was the response that I received from the Defence Media team on the 12th of September. Now let's move forward to the 15th of September. And this was a request. I think this is the one. Is that the one? No, it's not. Give me 1 second, folks. I've got to find the right document. I've got so many of them on my screen here. Let me just try again. Sorry, folks, I'm just trying to find the right document here for you. Is it this one? Ah, that's the one. Perfect. So 15th of September. I get an acknowledgement letter from NASA because on the 15th of September, I submitted a FOIA request seeking copies of emails, including supporting file attachments sent from to CC'd on behalf of Mark McInerney. Oh, my pronunciation is terrible. For the period 1 April 23 to 30 June 23. Again, a buffer of dates to try and capture some correspondence pertaining specifically to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So any correspondence that was leading up to the Five Eyes Forum and anything after. That was formally submitted, and I received an acknowledgement letter with a FOIA reference number. So again, that was on the 15th of September. Same day, I decided to submit a follow-up request or a separate FOIA request to NASA. And again, just got to make sure I'm looking at the right one. think it's this one. No, got them all out of order. Sorry, folks. Maybe this is it. This is one. Okay. So same day, 15th of September, submitted a separate FOIA request seeking copies of the prepared remarks and notes, written or electronic, that informed prepared verbal statements made by Dan Evans and Mark McInerney at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, held by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick of AARO in May 2023. Because that email that I showed you before, that I went after for Dan Evans, showed us that Dan Evans was saying, I'm not expected to talk, am I? We presume Sean Patrick is saying, can you say a few words? And Dan has said, yeah, okay, no problem, I can say a few words. So I'm thinking, well, maybe if he's given some time to talk at NASA's Five Eyes Forum, maybe he's going to prepare some remarks, much like he did when he made his statements, his remarks at NASA's public meeting on UAP. He was reading off of prepared remarks. So it makes sense that we would go for any prepared remarks or notes that those gentlemen had made representing NASA at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. That was on the 15th of September. Let's fast forward less than 2 weeks later, the 27th of September. And this is a FOIA request that I submitted to the Australian Department of Defence via email. Basically, again, following the line that the Australian Department of Defence had stated definitively and unambiguously that Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAPs. It's a little bit small on the screen, so let me just zoom in there for you all. So again, taking into account that statement, I said, on consideration of the above response by the Australian Department of Defence, please be advised that I wish to submit the following FOIA request. I kindly request copies of the Australian Department of Defence produced emails and written correspondence that relate to and support the determination made by the Australian Department of Defence that, quote, Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAP. I also kindly request that personal details be limited to the full names of individuals involved in any applicable FOIA response. So that was on, again, the 27th of September. And that now goes off. It starts to get reviewed, processed, and I wait to hear back. 28th of September, so day after I submitted that FOIA request, I get a response from NASA. Let me pull this up here. To make sure I'm looking at the right one, folks. So just bear with me one sec. Again, my NASA ones are a little bit hard to find, so I think this is the right one. There we go. So 15th of September. That's the 15th September one. This was the so this was the response on the 28th of September, following on from the FOIA request that I submitted on the 15th, again asking for emails for Mark McInerney, the NASA Director of UAP Research. They indicated, because I asked for emails that pertain specifically to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP held in May. I didn't know any other information. I only had Five Eyes Forum to go off and term UAP. So in response to your request, we conduct a search of NASA's Office of Information Technology for the email account of Mark McInerney using the search term Five Eyes Forum. That search located no records responsive to your request. Now, if I knew then what I know now on the vernacular that was used, I would have probably included the acronym of Five Eyes, FVEY, as well as I'm pretty sure I included UAP, so I'm not sure why I got a no response record there. But basically, no cigar going after emails for Mark McInerney in that date range for pertaining to the Five Eyes Forum. So that was on the 28th of September. that I received that response. A couple of days thereafter, 3rd of October, actually the 4th, 3rd of October, let me pull this up here. Make sure I got the right one. I think I've covered off for that one, actually. Let me just make sure. Yes. So this was the, you remember this was the, no, this was another request. This was a new request that I submitted. So this was a new request that I submitted on the 3rd of October, now asking for, again, going after emails from Mark McInerney, but being a little bit more specific with the specific keywords I wanted to have searched. FVEYS meeting, FVEYS, Five Eyes, FVEY, which is an important one, acronym for Five Eyes and Five Eyes Forum. So I went after documents with those keywords across a date range, comparable date range. So I submitted a new request that was covered a little bit more ground, basically. So that was on the 3rd of October. And again, I'm just doing everything in chronological order, so you can kind of get a sense as to how much work is involved just to try and get scraps of information through FOIA or submitting requests to Defense Media Team, the Minister for Defense, Susan Gough. There's a lot of work. The government is never going to volunteer any information. AARO will tell us what it wants to tell us. The Australian Department of Defence will tell us what it wants to tell us as part of their strategic narrative. They want to control the narrative. So I'm trying to think quite strategically as to, well, they're not going to reveal this information, so I have to know what questions to ask and what to look for through FOIA. So 9th of October, I submitted, where are we at? 21. I submitted a FOIA request. Zoom on in here. Again, referencing what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick had said at that Five Eyes forum on UAP, because often I'll think of, oh, maybe I should submit a FOIA request to them, and sometimes that's some months after, a key event has happened, like Dr. Kirkpatrick announcing the Five Eyes forum on the 31st of May of last year. So this is what I requested. I thought, all right, well, I'm going to, on consideration of the public statement made by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, I kindly request the following. I request copies of emails, including supporting file attachments, sent from to cross-copied to personnel assigned to the Air and Space Attaché, Washington, D.C., for the period 1 April 2023 to 30 June, again, trying to capture a buffer period of potential correspondence that contain any of the following keywords: FVEYS, meeting, Five Eyes, FVEY, being singular for Five Eyes, FVEYS, forum, Five Eyes forum. So I wanted to see if perhaps there was any correspondence that had gone through the Air and Space Attaché in Washington, D.C. that might reveal, well, were they involved? Did they represent Australia at the Five Eyes forum on UAP? So again, that was the 9th of October that was made. And again, the turnaround times on these FOIA requests are, Australia, anywhere up to 90 days. The US could be years. NASA's pretty good, 90 to 120 days, sometimes longer. But, as John Greenwald Jr. has found, trying to get FOIA documents out of the Navy or the OUSD can take sometimes years. I'm still waiting on responses to FOIA requests I submitted in late 2022 of AARO, and even prior to that, AIMSOG. So it takes a bloody long time. So you have to kind of play the long game, unfortunately. So we're now at let's Just make sure we're at the right one. Just make sure I'm at the right one here, folks. This is the one. Okay, so this was now a FOIA response that I had received, or a response letter from NASA. This was received on, again, so this was on the 18th of October, pertaining to the request that I submitted a little over a month prior, where I asked for copies of prepared remarks and notes, written or electronic, that informed prepared verbal statements made potentially by Dr. Dan Evans and Mark McInerney. Now, they basically came back and said, in response to your request, we contacted NASA's Offices of Science Mission Directorate and requested that Dr. Dan Evans and Mark McInerney conduct a search of their records for any prepared remarks and notes for the Five Eyes Forum on UAP in May 2023. Those searches located no records responsive to your request. That tells me that maybe if Dan Evans and Mark McInerney were asked to talk or make some remarks, maybe they did it off the cuff. They didn't have any prepared notes for it. It was pretty much done, kind of ad lib, so to speak. So unfortunately, it was a thread that I had to try and pull and see if it yielded any fruit. Unfortunately, it did not. So that was the 18th of October of last year. Now, at this point, I had connected with a journalist with the Canberra Times, the leading publication in Australia's capital, the Australian Capital Territory, where most of government resides, certainly our Parliament House is, and so on. And I developed a relationship with this journalist, Jamison Murphy. Actually, this is the wrong one. Let me pull up the right one for you. Make sure I got the right one. Here it is. So on the 22nd of October, Jamison Murphy consulted myself and Ross Coulthart and put together an article. It appeared in the second page of the Canberra Times, hard copy, so in the print and digital media. And the title of the article was Australia Ignores US Five Eyes UAP Briefing as Defence Force Mocks UFOs. So basically, again, the information that we had been told from the Australian Department of Defence on the 19th of July was Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAPs. So again, working on the assumption that the information that we're being told from our government is accurate and truthful, that information was shared with Jamison Murphy, who put an article out. Now, I've linked the article in the show notes below, so if you want to read it, you can. Unfortunately, with the Canberra Times, it is behind a paywall, so you will have to subscribe. Although if you jump on my Twitter feed, and you just type in, the Canberra Times, you'll actually get an archive link that will take you through to the article. And you can bypass the paywall. So a good article. I'm not going to read through it. I covered that off in a previous episode of the Unexplained Rundown. We read through the article. So if you want to have a look at that previous episode, you can. It's not in the show notes, but I will add it in there for you. So again, the first Australian news outlet that is covering Australia's complete lack of engagement with the United States on the UAP topic, based on what we've been told that Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAP. So that was the 22nd of October. Fast forward a couple more days, less than a week after that, the 28th of October. And I decided to submit a FOIA request asking for a copy of the current version of a document titled Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, Unidentified Flying Objects. It was basically a Chief of Air Force briefing document that was prepared on UAP, so that if and when the Chief of Air Force was required to testify, answer questions at a Senate estimates thrown at him potentially by Senator Whish-Wilson, the briefing document would prepare the Chief of Air Force for any questions thrown at him. It would include talking points, background information, basically a script that the Chief of Air Force could follow if he was pressed or questioned on UAP in Australian context, which had happened, in October of 2021 and February of 2023, and then subsequently in November 2023. I also went after emails pertaining to that Chief of Air Force brief. So that's an important one, and I'm going to reveal why in just a moment. So that request was submitted on the 28th of October 2023. 2 days later, 30th of October, submitted another FOIA request. Make sure I've got the right one here. Bear with me 1 second, folks. Now this is one that I need to make sure I'm looking at. I think this is the one. There we go. So sorry, this was a response that I received from the Australian Department of Defence. I had requested, again, this was the request that I had made. I went after emails sent from to cross-copied to personal assigned to the Air and Space Attaché in Washington, D.C. Again, wanting to find out if there'd been any correspondence that had crossed the desk of anyone that's associated with the Air and Space Attaché in Washington, D.C. pertaining to the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. No documents were identified as matching the scope of the request. Now, it's important that I show all these because it shows you how much, how many questions are being asked of the Australian Department of Defence, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Freedom of Information Team for Defence, the Australian Defence Media about Australia's attendance or non-attendance, the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So it's not like they received, they had Brandy Vincent reach out, dating back to the days after the Five Eyes Forum on UAP in early June. And then you've got these flurry of emails to Defence Media Team, Australian Signals Directorate. You've got FOIA requests. You've got emails to Richard Marles. You've got questions on notice that are being submitted by Senator Whish-Wilson. It's not just one email. They're getting bombarded basically with requests as to, did Australia attend? You're saying it didn't. Why didn't we attend? Did it receive an invitation? If so, why did it not accept the invitation, etc.? So that's kind of why I'm going through this laborious task of showing you all of these requests to paint the picture that it wasn't just one bit of correspondence. It was time and time again that folks are asking the question, did we attend? Did Australia attend? If not, why didn't we attend? Why didn't we accept the invitation? And so on. So that was the 30th of October. That came back, that no records response. All right, so we won't stop there. We'll keep going. So now let's jump to the 2nd of November. And Senator Whish-Wilson, not satisfied with the responses that he received to his questions on notice from the Australian Department of Defence on the 19th of July, when the AUDOD said Australia did not attend the United States briefing on UAP. I reached out to Senator Whish-Wilson at the end of October saying, look, here are some questions that you should probably think about asking of AUDOD. And you remember that I sent an email to Richard Marles asking, did Australia receive an invite? If so, why did we not accept the invitation, and so on? And so this is the question on notice that Senator Whish-Wilson had submitted, his office had submitted on the 2nd of November, 2023. Did the Australian Department of Defence receive an invitation from the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to attend the inaugural Five Eyes Forum on UAP in May 2023, led by the AARO Director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick? Carbon copy of the question that I asked Richard Marles. So that you can see is me helping Senator Whish-Wilson's lines of inquiry by suggesting some questions that he should ask in questions on notice. This is why I say it's so important that you try and develop a relationship with your member of parliament or your senator. If you develop a relationship with them, you can help inform their thinking and lines of inquiry on UAP if they take that topic seriously, because they know how seriously you take it. You're their constituent. What matters to them is what matters to you. So if you develop that relationship with them, you can help inform their lines of inquiry. If the answer to that question is yes, for what reasons did the Australian Department of Defence decide that Australia, as a Five Eyes member, did not attend AARO's Five Eyes Forum on UAP? Who has final decision on attendance? How many Five Eyes Forums meetings has Australia not attended in the last 5 years? So again, Senator Whish-Wilson is working on the assumption that the information that he received in response to his question on a nose from the Australian Department of Defence on the 19th of July was accurate, and it was truthful that Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAP. So he submitted that question. Now, 27th of October, fast forward a little over 3 weeks later, I finally receive a response to the UAP petition that I submitted to the House of Representatives, and that ended, when was it? In June. So this was a letter that was submitted by the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Defence, Richard Marles, to Susan Templeman. She is the chair of the Standing Committee on Petitions, and this was his response. Thank you for your correspondence. I note the petition requests the House conduct a formal review of UAP to consider the establishment of an investigatory body to assess the potential national security threats and safety of flight risks that UAP pose. As acknowledged in the petition, Defence ceased handling reports of UAP in 1996 as there was no scientific or compelling reason to continue to divert resources to the recording and investigation of UAP. Defence does maintain robust safety and security reporting and management frameworks that are sufficiently flexible to capture UAP. I categorically disagree with that statement. I don't believe that's the case. The Australian government is aware of the establishment of the United States All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and Defence monitors AARO reports. There are no plans to replicate a similar mechanism. The government remains committed to aviation safety and national security. Should there be a compelling reason to believe existing reporting mechanisms are insufficient, the government would reconsider. Well, the fact that you've got F-35 pilots sitting down with Ross Coulthart in his residence saying, we're seeing anomalous objects in the airspace, in Australian airspace, and we can't reconcile them, we can't identify it, and we're not reporting it to our higher-ups because, one, we don't want to have a black dot placed against our name because of the stigma and ridicule that plagues this topic and continues to this day, particularly within the Australian Department of Defence. And I've shown that to be true, evidenced by emails that I've secured for release through FOIA. And there's no investigatory body. So if they submit a report of a UAP to their higher-ups, what the hell happens to that report? It doesn't go anywhere. No one's going to investigate it. So, isn't that enough of a compelling reason? If you've got anecdotal evidence of folks sitting down with Australian investigative journalists like Ross Coulthart saying we're seeing things, but we're not reporting it because we know we're not going to be taken seriously, that is the national security threat issue. That is the big problem. So that was the response, which was disappointing, but to be expected from the Australian Minister of Defence following their submission, those 759 signatures that we're able to secure for the UAP petition back in June earlier in the year. So that was 27th of November. Let's fast forward almost 2 weeks later to the 7th of December. And we now make sure, again, this is a NASA one, so I have to make sure I'm looking at the right document here. Make sure it's the right one. Yep, that's it. Okay. So, correspondence from NASA dated 7th of December pertaining to my request that I submitted on the 3rd of October, asking for emails sent from to cross-copy to Mark McInerney, remember, the NASA Director for UAP Research, for period 1 April to 30 June 2023 that contained any of those Five Eyes keywords. In response to your request, we requested that NASA's Office of Information Technology conduct a search. Now, remember, they had conducted a search on the keyword Five Eyes forum, and that was all in an earlier request, and they didn't get anything back. Well, now I've expanded the search, and interestingly, I've used Five Eyes forum, but that wasn't the keyword that was the real kicker. The keyword that I suspect has produced some results here is FVEY, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So they used the search term FVEYS, meeting all the ones that you can see in parentheses there. That search identified a 5-page record responsive to your request. We received the responsive record under FOIA to determine whether it may be disclosed to, because it contains information of interest to another entity, being no doubt OUSD. Because of AARO, we referred all 5 pages to the Department of Defense, and that request is currently still pending. I do not have those documents, those emails pertaining to Mark McInerney. So hopefully that will be released in the not too distant future, and that will shed some more results. It has to be cleared by AARO, it has to be cleared by OUSD. So that was on the 7th of December. This is where it gets interesting. 15th of December. Make sure I've got up the right one here. There we go. All right. So remember that question that Senator Wish Wilson submitted on the 2nd of November saying, did the Australian Department of Defense receive an invitation from the US AARO office to attend the inaugural Five Eyes meeting? If it did, why did Australia not accept the invitation? Oh, yes. A defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington attended. A complete 180 backflip admission on the 19th of July said, no, we didn't attend. 15th of December, less than 6 months later, they're doing a 180 and say, oh, yes, no, sorry, we did attend. How do you stuff that up? How do you get that so badly? How do you get it so wrong? You had requests from journalist Brandy Vincent. You had email submissions that I had sent to Defence Media, the Australian Signals Directorate. You had multiple FOIA requests. You had an Australian senator, Senator Wish Wilson, asked the question unambiguously or definitively in a question on notice. And you couldn't get your shit together and answer that question accurately and truthfully on the 19th of July. Why this 180 backflip admission? Were you lying back in July, or are you that incompetent that you couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery and figure out and ask the right people internally, hey guys, we're getting all this information about the AARO's Five Eyes forum on UAP, and that was a Five Eyes engagement. Did we have anyone represent Australian Department of Defense at that briefing? They couldn't even figure that out. And so it was only through the persistence of Senator Wish Wilson and this follow-up question I noticed that the Australian Department of Defense has now done a backflip and saying, oh, no, sorry, guys, we got it wrong. We have to now come clean and actually say, no, we did attend. And I totally agree with not from here. They had to tell the truth when they were pressured. I agree. They were kind of caught red-handed, and when they were pressed, they had to come clean and admit. And again, no explanation, just, oh, yes, yeah, defense representative of the Australian Embassy in Washington attended. So that got a lot of people confused and frustrated and led to a flurry of follow-up emails and FOIA requests from me and I know others. So that was on the 15th of December. A couple of days thereafter, 18th of December, you have a response, statement of reasons response from the Australian Department of Defence. I submitted a FOIA request on the 27th of September asking for copies of Australian Department of Defence produced emails and written correspondence that relate to and support the determination made by the Department of Defence that Australia did not attend a United States briefing on UAP. So basically, I wanted to see correspondence. I wanted to check your work. I wanted to see, well, what what documentary evidence can you produce that confirms that led you to that determination that Australia did not attend the United States brief on UAP, which then obviously on the 15th of December, they're saying, oh, yes, we did attend. So what was their response? I've identified one document as falling within the scope of the request. They partially released it. So I was very interested to review that document. How did they reach that determination that Australia did not attend the United States, the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, and then only a month later they're saying, oh no, we did. So this was their reasoning. So they provided me with an email. This was on, dating back to Wednesday, the 22nd of June. So remember, 20th of June is when Senator Whish-Wilson submitted the question on notice. Did Australia attend the United States Five Eyes meeting in May 2023? If so, did Australia attend the United States brief on UAPs? So this was an email sent by someone within the SPNI Ministerial and Parliamentary Division. RAAF MLO is Royal Australia Force Ministerial Liaison Officer or Office. SPNI is Strategy, Policy, and Intelligence, something. I could get the acronym wrong. Anyway, so 21st of June, the email will come down to, we'll go back to the first email. Sorry, so 20th of June, the same day that Senator Whish-Wilson submitted that question on notice saying, well, did we attend? This was the question. This is a question that Senator Whish-Wilson asked. Did Australia attend the recent Five Eyes meeting held in May? If so, did it attend the US briefing on UAPs? So good afternoon, team. Thank you so much for the time on the phone. So obviously trying to get on top of this. Senator Whish-Wilson's just submitted a question on notice, and we now need to be able to respond with an answer. I would appreciate your input by Wednesday, the 21st, the following day. The email that comes back. Good morning. Apologies for the delay. This is the day after the question on notice. I have spoken with our divisions and they are unable to provide input. They are not aware of this meeting and briefing. Despite the fact that you had the Australian Defence Media Team contacted repeatedly, Brandy Vincent in June, myself, shortly thereafter, there were FOIA requests, not just questions on notice. You had a whole ton of folks asking questions about the Five Eyes Forum. So if you're coming to this determination, well, who did you actually ask? Who did you ask around and try and get some information? Because you clearly, strategic engagement, strategy, policy, and industry group, whoever this individual is, they didn't do a good enough job. They didn't ask around enough to get a truthful and accurate answer to Senator Whish-Wilson's question. So that's not satisfactory. So let's continue on. So that was on the that was the 18th of December that those documents came back through FOIA. 20th of December, 2 days thereafter. I submitted a request basically reiterating, well, this is what the Australian Department of Defence is now saying. Yes, a defence representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C. attended. So my question is, all right, on consideration of the above, I kindly request copies of Australian Department of Defence produced emails, including supporting attachments, written correspondence that relate to and support the determination made by, this was comparable with the request that you just saw me show the documents for. So that worked. So I thought I'd use the same verbiage and language in this request. Correspondence that relate to and support the determination made by the Australian Department of Defence that a defence representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, led by the Director of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, in May. That was the request. So that's off. And so now we wait, we play the waiting game, and we wait for a response to that FOIA submission. That was the 20th of December. 22nd of December. is it? Make sure I got the right one here. Hang on, folks. Let me just make sure. Here we go. I think it's this one. There we go. Make sure I got the right one. Sorry, folks. Yes, this is it. So this was on the 22nd of December. This was another FOIA request that I submitted. Again, along the same sort of commentary. After the Department of Defense said, yes, a defense representative of the Australian Embassy in Washington attended, I submitted a separate request saying, on consideration of the above, I kindly request copies of written correspondence and emails sent from to cross-copied the defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington, so in quotes, that attended the Five Eyes Forum brief and meeting on Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena led by AARO in May. That include the following keywords: AARO, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, UAP, UFOs, Unidentified Flying Object, Five Eyes Forum, the acronyms, Sean Kirkpatrick, and the date range for the request was the 1st of April to the 15th of December, 2023. So I wanted to see if I could track down any correspondence for the Australian Defence representative or representatives, or they said singular, so representative that attended the Five Eyes Forum. So that request was off and in the works, getting processed. That was the 22nd of December. 29th of December of last year, I get this response back from the Department of Defense. Remember, on the 1st of July, I had requested the visitor records for the Pentagon visitor records for folks that attended the Five Eyes Forum and UAP. Now, they came back and said the Pentagon Force Protection Agency, a component of the Office of Secretary of Defense, conducted a search of their record systems based on the information provided in your request. After thorough searches of electronic records and files of the PFPA, no records of the kind you described could be identified, which is very unusual. Again, it could have been the way that I worded the request, but I did say that that was submitted, sponsored by, or submitted, records were submitted on behalf of AARO to secure those visitor passes, but no cigar, which was really unusual. So I do have a comparable follow-up request that's slightly separate to that, which I'm hoping. I mean, I've kind of gone after the attendee list from AARO's side, so that probably won't show any names, but it will give us an idea as to exactly how many people attended. Ryan Sprague's in the house. Welcome, my friend. You're back in sunny old Scotland, or is it a miserable cold Scotland? I'm not too sure at the moment, but welcome, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out of your morning, your day, your evening, your graveyard shift to chime in and say good day. It's good to see you, my friend. So that was on the 29th of December. Obviously, we have the Christmas period, the New Year break. Let's fast forward to the 11th of February of this year. Now we're kind of getting closer to where some interesting stuff is happening. So 11th of February, and we're always happy to have you, Ryan. So thanks for dropping by. So 11th of February, we have. Let me just make sure I got the right article here. There we go. This is the one. Our good friend Jamison Murphy at the Canberra Times comes up with a follow-up article. Again, he consults Ross Coulthart and myself for background information on this follow-up. Defense admits attending UFO briefing after vigorous denials. So again, the only Australian news outlet that is covering this story. No other news outlet or legacy media, 7, 9, 10, ABC, SBS, Sky News, no one's touching it. They're not doing they're giving defense a free pass and not challenging them on this denial and then this backflip admission. Why? I don't understand. And my level of frustration with the legacy media in Australia. Alien Girl 111 from the Nikki Starchild show. Welcome, my friend. Thank you for good morning, where you are waking up from on your side of the globe. Thank you for joining. Living Chaos is here as well. And we do have a few other friends that I wanted to say hi to earlier on. Mindfork, Akashi Chris had joined earlier on. So thank you all for joining across the pond. It's always so good to see some of my colleagues and friends from the other side of the globe. So thanks for coming and stopping by and hanging out. So that was on the 11th of February, that article by the Canberra Times, Jamison Murphy, 11th of February. Let's fast forward to just shy of 2 weeks later, the 22nd of February. We have a document come back. So this was the documents that I got back. I requested the Chief of Air Force brief. Remember, I was saying I wanted to get the Chief of Air Force brief that was being prepared for the October-November Senate estimates hearing. So, where Air Marshal Robert Chipman, if he was asked questions about UAP, he would be prepped and ready to go, have a script, have some talking points that he could just follow and address any questions that maybe Senator Wish Wilson was going to ask. There was Senator Wish Wilson, unfortunately, did not attend the October Senate estimates in 2023. He attended October 2021, February 2022, and November 2022. Because he's only a participating member of the Senate estimates for Defense, Foreign Affairs and Trade, he basically has to wait around the entire day or 2 days to get his 8 to 10 minutes, which is unfortunately not a good use of his time, because he's got a number of other important topics that his constituents want him to represent them on and represent their issues. So it wasn't worth his time to attend the Senate estimates in October 2023 just to get a few minutes. But as we've seen, there is value in him submitting questions on notice, and that's often what he has done, and I imagine will continue to do. So this document was significant because it shows us that Air Marshal Robert Chipman, Chief of Air Force, is to lead on the topic of UAP in Australian context, but also bringing into play Professor Tanya Munro, who is Australia's Chief Defence Scientist. She heads up the Defence Science and Technology Group. I covered this at length in a previous episode of the Unexplained Rundown. I think it was called Australia Extends... Australia broadens its reach or expands. Australia expands engagement on UAP. Australian Defence expands engagement on UAP, or something to that effect, where I covered this document in detail. But what is of importance in this document is this is a document that was prepared in October 2023, so some months after the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Again, remember, this is before the Australian Department of Defence admitted. Remember, it admitted on the 15th of December 2023. It admitted that a defence representative at the embassy in Washington attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So this brief was prepared prior to that admission by the Australian Department of Defence on the 15th of December. If raised, so in other words, if you, Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Rob Chipman, are asked this question, here's how you should respond. If raised, has the US shared intelligence regarding UAP? The United States has shared intelligence on UAP. Defense will continue to monitor and engage with the AARO on UAP, especially if they are deemed to be a security or safety threat, which they are. So hang on a second. The United States has shared intelligence on UAP with defense. Well, when did they share that intelligence? You're basically telling us back on the 19th of July that Australia didn't attend AARO's Five Eyes Forum on UAP, which is Five Eyes. It's an intelligence alliance designed to share intelligence. So what is this comment that you're making on the 23rd of October of last year? You're telling us that the US has shared intelligence? Well, in what capacity have they shared intelligence? Because you've told us that we didn't attend Five Eyes Forum. Oh, but then fast forward to a few months, 15th of December, and now you're now coming clean and saying, yes, we did actually attend. So is this a clue back in October that there was something funny going on behind the scenes? Some folks obviously know that AARO's been sharing intelligence. Now, it's no one other than in the United States other than AARO. So someone in defense knows in October that AARO is sharing intelligence with Australia on UAP. So is it as Ross Coulthart always says, assume a screw up before a conspiracy? Is it as basic as that? There's a degree of incompetence and people aren't doing their due diligence in the Australian Department of Defense? Or are there some silly and funny shenanigans going on where some folks are playing a very strategic game and not wanting this information to get out? And I would agree with you, Jimmy. Miss Monroe knows some info on the topic, I would think. Yeah, and I've got some FOIA documents that shed some light on that. I don't think she's actually corresponded with anyone directly on UAP, but she's certainly being briefed, let me tell you. So let's now, that was on... when was that? That was, where are we up to? Sorry, folks. I just got to make sure I got my train of thought here. That was, make sure I've got the right one. That was 386. Perfect. All right. So that was on the 22nd of February of this year. Same day, 22nd of February. I get this back from the Australian Department of Defense, the FOIA team. So remember, on the 20th of December, a few months prior, I requested, I kindly request copies of Australian Department of Defense produced emails and written correspondence that relate to and support the determination made by a Department of Defense that a defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C. Attended the Five Eyes Forum. So again, using that language that had worked for me previously. I identified one document as matching the description of the request. I have decided to refuse access under Section 7, exemption of certain persons and bodies of the FOIA Act. Now, that's important because that gives us a massive clue as to who or which body in the Australian Department of Defense was represented at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Section 7, the exemption states, Section 7 provides that agencies are exempt from the operation of the FOIA Act in relation to particular types of documents. Section 7.2a states, an agency is exempt from the operation of this act, the FOIA Act, in relation to the following documents. A document, an intelligence agency document that has originated with or has been received from any of the following. And the one that I've highlighted is the one that I can say with a high degree of confidence was represented at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, represented Australia, the Defence Intelligence Organisation. Historically, many decades past, that was referred to as the Joint Intelligence Bureau, and then it became the Joint Intelligence Organisation, and then it's now known as the Defence Intelligence Organisation. The history of the Defence Intelligence Organisation, it's investigated UAP in the past. So it is not a big stretch to make an educated guess that they were represented at the Five Eyes Forum. They represent Australia at the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. And this is, in my opinion, a dead giveaway. I've gone after documents pertaining specifically to the individual that attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP, and they come back and saying it is exempt from release. Because unfortunately in Australia, all of the intelligence services, which are those you can see listed on screen, are exempt from FOIA, which means we can't get any information from any of those intelligence services, which is frustrating because in the United States, intelligence services aren't necessarily exempt from FOIA. Frustrating. So that was the 22nd of February. It gave us a big clue as to who represented Australia at the Five Eyes Forum. Now let's continue on. I'm just going to pull up our next document. There we go. That's the one we want to get rid of. So this is now the 26th of February. 4 days after that refusal to release due to an exempt agency. 37. Let me pull this up for you. So this was pertaining to, this was a request that I submitted on the 26th of February of this year. Again, saying following the recent release of Defence FOI 386, which is the one you just saw me review before, where it shows that folks within Defence are asking around, but they couldn't find anyone that was able to provide any information on AARO's on attendance to the AARO meeting. I decided to go after the that was the Chief of Air Force brief, where it said that the US has shared intelligence on UAP. That was in October. So there was a Senate estimates in February of this year. So I decided to go after the February update, the February version of that same Chief of Air Force brief on UAP. So that was submitted. That was off and running. That was being processed. So we wait for that to come back. Now, fast forward a little bit of time. That was the 26th of February. We fast forward now to the 13th of April. And we have a FOIA request that I submitted, going after a copy of all correspondence and emails sent to from CCC, the Air Vice Marshal Stephen Chappell, who is now the Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Stephen Chappell, for the period 1 October 2023 to March 31st of March, on the subject matter of UAP, otherwise known as UFOs. So 13th of April, that is off and running and out there being processed. Same day, 13th of April, I submit a separate FOIA request asking for a copy of any Defence Space Command produced emails for the period 1 October 2023 to March 31 on the subject matter of UAP, because now there is evidence that the Defence Science and Technology Group, the Defence Space Command, and even the Australian Space Agency had now been engaged on the UAP topic in Australia by the Australian Department of Defence. It wasn't just the Royal Australian Air Force that was leading, it was these other agencies that were being brought into discussions and preparing briefing documents should they be asked questions at Senate estimates, as an example. So it was the 13th of April. Again, I'm just showing you all of these requests for context. Yeah, interesting point that that Not From Here makes. Let me just pull this up. I doubt it is incompetence. It's pretty obvious what they are doing. Nobody there expected the Lavac Inquisition. I think you might be right. I don't think they anticipated someone like me would try and dot the I's and cross the T's and follow the breadcrumb trail and take the path that I have to try and get some information, because this is a topic that I'm interested in. I obviously know that there's many of my friends and colleagues in Australia that are also interested as well. We want to know, is our government and Department of Defence taking this topic seriously? If they're not, why aren't they? Because our US ally is. So appreciate the comments there, Not From Here. So let's now jump forward. We talked about 13th of April, that FOIA request that I submitted to Defence Space Command, and that's now out there waiting for a response. So let's now fast forward about a month to the 15th of May. So we're getting close to present day, folks. So I appreciate you hanging with me. Let's pull up an email that I sent. This was a FOIA request that I submitted on the 21st actually not the 21st of May. It should be, here it is. This is the one. 15th of May. I submitted a FOIA request, again, referencing what we now know to be true or have been told is true, that a defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So I now request a copy of the electronic calendar/diary for the defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington that attended the Five Eyes Forum briefing meeting on UAP led by AARO. The search date for the request is 17 May to 31 May. Now, at this point in time, we didn't know what date the Five Eyes Forum on UAP took place. So I was trying to confirm the specific date of AARO's Five Eyes Forum by going after the calendar for the defense representative that attended the Five Eyes Forum. Now, I get a response. Obviously, I had to submit a follow-up on the 21st because they hadn't even acknowledged receipt of my request. And so I received this on the 22nd of May. It was just an email. I refer to your request, which was as follows. The Department of Defense has considered the scope of your request. In conclusion, any material contained in the documents you have requested originated with or was received from an exempt agency pursuant to Section 72A. So that's telling us that the calendar for the individual that attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP was a representative of an intelligence agency that was exempt from FOIA. And again, more supporting evidence that we can conclude with a high degree of confidence that it was someone from the Defense Intelligence Organization that attended the Five Eyes Forum on UAP. So we now have a clearer picture. Now, is the Defense Intelligence Agency talking to the Royal Australian Air Force, talking to the Defence Space Command, talking to folks that are ministerial liaison officers, talking to folks in strategy, policy, and industry? It could be a complete cluster F, and no one is talking to one another. Complete communication breakdown as to one of the reasons why there was this whole kerfuffle. No, we didn't attend. Oh, sorry, yes, we did attend. So is that one possible scenario? Or is it, again, something a little bit more nefarious in the way of shenanigans being played? Wixie77, thanks for joining. Excellent rundown of the Unexplained Rundown, Grant. Thank you for your kind words and joining. So let's get to we're getting into the meat of it now, folks. So the 12th of June, this is only, less than a month ago. We're looking now at, this was a FOIA. So this was a document that I went after emails for the Air Vice Marshal, or is it Vice Air Marshal, one or the other, Stephen Chappell, who's now the Chief of Air Force he's the Chief of Air Force, obviously the lead of the Royal Australian Air Force. So this was the email that I got back on the 12th of June. It was an email chain on the 12th of February. And we don't know who it's from, but Daily Defense Talking Points, they're obviously wanting to do some preparation for the upcoming February Senate estimates and get all of their ducks in a row and make sure they're armed and prepped for any UAP questions that are asked. Talking points, a lot of it's redacted. S22 is kind of irrelevant to the request, so it's got nothing to do with UAP. So there's a whole lot of redactions, but there is a section dedicated to UAP for the Strategy, Policy, and Industry Group. This is the key one. Issue of the day. A defense representative at the Australian Embassy in Washington attended the inaugural Five Eyes Forum on UAP in May. If you, the person that is attending the Senate estimates, you're in the hot seat being asked questions by, say, a Senator Wish Wilson or other senators, if you're asked this question, why did Defence's response change regarding attendance at the UAP forum when responding to the question on notice from Senator Wish Wilson? So they're saying, why did you say that we didn't attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP in July of last year, and then in December you're saying we did? What? How do you get that so wrong? The response that they want to prep the person with that's going to testify to Senate estimates. Defense was unable to find a record of attendance at the UAP forum when responding to the Freedom of Information request received 9th of June. That was one that I submitted. And the petition received 21 June. Also what I submitted and secured 759 signatures for. Defense then found a report of attendance when responding to a question on notice from Senator Wish Wilson on the 15th of December. Is that an explanation for you as to how they could get it so wrong? It doesn't satisfy me whatsoever. So they're still not offering. How do you get it so wrong? What degree of confidence can Australian taxpayers have that their elected representatives are going to have questions that they ask of folks in positions of leadership and authority in defence in the government? How confident can we, Australian taxpayers, be that responses that the government or Australian Department of Defence gives to our elected representatives is going to be truthful and accurate? I don't have any confidence now that they can organise a piss up in a brewery. I have absolutely none. How do you just stuff it up that bad? Again, is it just complete incompetence, or is there something more nefarious being played within the Australian Department of Defence? I honestly don't know, and I would love it if they expanded on this answer. They won't, obviously, because it fuels the embarrassment and complete lack of due diligence that's been exercised on their part. So they don't want to stoke the fire and add to any potential embarrassment by adding more commentary. They'll keep it short and sweet, and they'll just give the absolute minimum amount of information, as they always do. Let's go to the next day, the 13th of June. That was on the 12th of June of this year. Now, let's fast forward to the next day, the 13th of June. This is what we've all been waiting for, folks, and apologies it's taken so long to get here. On the 5th of June of 2023, you'll remember that I had submitted, it all stemmed from that FOIA request that I submitted to NASA. I went after emails for Dan Evans. And remember, there are a lot of redactions in that email for Dan Evans that were referred to AARO for review and approval and clearance. This response was exactly that. So it's saying the Deputy Secretary of Defense, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, a component of the Office of the Secretary of Defense, has conducted a review of the provided 2 pages. AARO, I'm not sure what's 2 because NASA said there was 3. Anyway, AARO had determined that portions of the 2 pages are exempt from release pursuant to whatever the clause is, B6, as disclosure of the information would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of privacy. So B6 is personal privacy. Please note that we have considered the foreseeable harm standard when reviewing documents and applying exemptions. So basically they're saying we're going to redact personal information because we don't want people to be harassed. We don't want their information to be made public. Fair enough. I respect and appreciate, privacy laws and so on. So that was the letter that I received, the response letter pertaining to the request that kind of stemmed from that request to NASA. And so this was where is it? Let me just make sure let me pull the document up for you. Here it is. This is it. So this is what you have all been waiting for. And for those of you that follow me on X or Twitter, you will have already probably seen this document. It has been making the rounds on X. It's had a ton of people view it. It's been reported in the media. So I was pleased that I was able to secure the release of this document and bring it to the forefront. So it's an email. Subject heading: External, meaning it's been sent to some folks external to DoD. Updated FVEY, acronym for Five Eyes, Inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group Agenda, 24 May 2023. So we now know that the Five Eyes Forum on UAP that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick announced to the world at the NASA public meeting on UAP on the 31st of May 2023 was formally recognized as, was formally officially called the Five Eyes Inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group, their first working group meeting, and it was held on the 24th of May. This email was sent a couple of days before the Five Eyes Forum. We don't know who it's from. We don't know who it's sent to. There's one individual, though, that we do know, a Brian Fishpow, SES USAF, United States Air Force. Now, thanks to the good work of folks out there on Twitter, namely a gentleman by the name of Dean Johnson, Douglas Dean Johnson, does some wonderful work on legislation on Twitter. He was able to weigh in and provide some commentary on who this individual is, because I didn't know who he was, and I wasn't sure why his name was made public when everyone else was kind of their details, their name was held back, redacted. So Dean Johnson on the 20th of June says, incidentally, this is obviously a couple of days after I've released this document on X, people have started commenting on it. Incidentally, anyone who wishes to better understand how the United States Air Force has been striving to improve its integration of information on diverse aerial and other threats may wish to read an interesting 2017 interview with Mr. Fishbow's wife, Veerlyn Jamison, who, as a 3-star general, served as the USAF's Chief Intelligence Officer, Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance for 3 years prior to her retirement. So obviously some information pertaining to Mr. Fishbow's wife. Now, I believe Dean Johnson was the preceding comment. This was on the 19th of June. This was specifically, I should have read this first, but I've done it in the wrong order. So Dean Johnson is now saying, following the release of this key document, I note that among the original recipients of this email, the one that I'm going through with you, all names were redacted for privacy, with the exception, for some reason unknown, of Brian D. Fishpow, SES USAF. For your information, Mr. Fishpow was a speaker at a conference on counter-UAS drone technology in Virginia in December 2023, then listed as Deputy National Intelligence Manager for Aviation, reporting to the National Intelligence Manager Aviation, NIM-A, in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So that just kind of gives you a sense as to, well, who the hell is this Mr. Fishpow guy, and what kind of relevance does he potentially have to the topic? If AARO is talking all about safety of flight risks and national security, then obviously they've got someone that's done some work in this area pertaining to counter drone, because AARO hasn't ruled out that UAP can be attributed to drone technology. Certainly, I think a portion of it is going to be drones, but that just gives you some context as to who that particular individual is. I don't know anything more about that guy. Would be interested to know. Again, you've now got a ton of other people that have been cross-copied in on this email. Presumably, this is from Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, I would imagine. And in the email, he goes on to say, "Good morning. Safe travels to those flying this way. Here is an updated schedule for the 24th of May. Who? So who's going to be at the, who are the key stakeholders at the AARO, the AARO's Five Eyes Inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group meeting? Representatives from the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, representatives from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, the FAA, interesting, NASA. So we know Dan Evans and Mark McInerney, and Five Eyes partners working UAP. What is it going to be about? This inaugural Five Eyes UAP caucus brings together key partners to cultivate shared awareness of allies' UAP issues, detection, identification, and mitigation activities and challenges, and opportunities for mission-specific collaboration. Planned presentations include our own office updates on operations and analyses, and in bold, updates from Five Eyes partners. So that tells us that Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand are all going to be talking at this working group, this meeting, and talking about what its respective countries are doing about UAP. Now, it makes me think, well, what on earth is this Australian representative, more than likely from the Defence Intelligence Organisation, going to be able to bring to the table and offer and contribute? Because the Australian Department of Defence hasn't been investigating the UAP topic since 1996. It hasn't formally reviewed its current position on UAP. It has no current reporting or recording protocols whatsoever for defence personnel on UAP. And at one point, it indicated in FOIA documents that Australia has no desire to collaborate with allies on the UAP issue. So what an egg-in-the-face, embarrassing moment for that Defence Intelligence Organisation representative that is going to be representing Australia and talking about UAP. Now, that's my assumption. Do the intelligence services know a hell of a lot more about UAP in an Australian context than the Royal Australian Air Force, the Defence Base Command, the Army, the Navy, and so on? I suspect they probably do. Even though that we don't have any formal investigatory office or reporting protocols specifically for UAP, I suspect that the intelligence services know a hell of a lot more than what we, the general public, are being told on the topic. And Carl Extra goes on to say, this is a great false flag. Get trolls to threaten Kirkpatrick, then use the threat to redact all the info. And appreciate your comments there, Carl Extra. So thanks for weighing in. So that's just interesting. There's going to be presentations made from each of the Five Eyes partners attending. The intent for the meeting, the intent for the working group is to develop a framework for future UAP collaboration. That tells me this is not a one-time event. The Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group will be ongoing engagement across the Five Eyes. This meeting was taking place on the 24th of May of 2023 from 8:30 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. So almost a full day briefing. No host lunch, Pentagon food court. Come on in all day for a briefing, but we're not going to serve you any food. Jump on down to Macca's or KFC in the Pentagon food court, and you can visit the pig pen and you can feed your face yourself. That'll take place for an hour, 12:30 to 1:30. For those without Pentagon access, please plan to meet at the Pentagon visitors entrance no later than 8 a.m. Now, interesting that I went after the Pentagon visitor records, because we know that they obviously had to have visitor passes to get into to access the Pentagon. But again, my FOIA request didn't yield any fruit on visitor passes, and I'm not too sure why on that one. Where is this UAP working group or UAP Caucus working group meeting happening? At the Pentagon in room redacted. Now, was it a skiff? If there's classified information that's being discussed, it's quite possibly that it was a skiff. I'm not too sure. So this was the agenda. This was the schedule. 7:45 in the morning to 8:15. Get here pretty early. Check-ins at the Pentagon Visitors Center for those requiring a visitor's badge. Then at 8:30, so you got 15 minutes to sort yourself out. At 8:30 to 8:45, administrative remarks and introductions. So they obviously go around the room, say who they are and so on. 8:45 to 10 a.m., Dr. Kirkpatrick's welcoming address and US updates on UAP efforts from, or talking about AARO operations, AARO analysis, obviously to date, AARO strategic communications, that's an interesting one, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, NASA. So NASA was asked to talk, yet there were no prepared remarks that I was able to secure for release through FOIA for Dan Evans and Mark McInerney. Were they doing it ad lib? Quite possibly. NIM-A, National Intelligence Manager for Aviation, and NIM-M, National Intelligence Manager for Maritime. NIM-A, those of you will remember when the National Intelligence Manager for Aviation, they slapped an icon of a UFO on their logo. That's the NIM-A. You'll remember those guys. They did it as a prank. So someone obviously taken the piss in NIM Aviation. 10 a.m. to 10:15. We can have a break, have a smoko if you need to. 10:15 to 11:30. Five Eyes partner UAP updates. So for an hour and 15 minutes, there is presentations from the representative from Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and New Zealand. So what's that? An hour and 15 minutes divided by 4. How many minutes do they get to talk each? Not too sure, because it could go a bit longer than that. So 11:30 to 12:30. We're then, I don't know what the breakdown is there, but there's obviously a decent chunk of time that each Five Eyes partner is going to be talking about what they bring to the table. Canada has obviously got a lot more to talk about than Australia, than the UK and New Zealand, because Canada's got the Sky Canada project, or is it Sky Project Canada? I think it's Sky Project Canada. So it is taking the UAP topic seriously, not as significantly as the United States, but a hell of a lot more than Australia, UK, and New Zealand. UK has been very quiet on the topic, but Christopher Sharp, who does some great work for the Liberation Times, has been able to confirm that and get some comments from Ministry of Defence on their attendance at the UAP Caucus Working Group meeting following the release of this document. New Zealand, what do they have to offer? Because they don't have a reporting or recording protocol in place for UAP, and Australia certainly doesn't, even though Australia has an incredibly long history of investigating the UAP topic. 11:30 to 12:30 for an hour, we're going to have a discussion on Five Eyes UAP collaboration way ahead plan. What is that? To me, that sounds like an action plan for future engagement. So what are we going to do to collaborate collectively as a Five Eyes partnership? How are we going to continue to collaborate and engage one another in a meaningful and impactful way? 12:30 to 1:30, lunch in the Pentagon food court. 1:30 to 3 p.m. So for, an hour and a half, continued discussions on Five Eyes UAP collaboration way ahead plan if it's needed. So potentially they're having, they're having, up to 2.5 hours of discussions on UAP collaboration way ahead plan. Now, I can tell you that John Greenwald Jr. is certainly going to go after that way ahead plan to see if he can track that down. And one of the really good things about the release of this document is it's triggered a number of folks around the world, not just me in Australia, but it's triggered colleagues of mine in New Zealand, in the UK, in Canada, and obviously John Greenwald in the United States, that are now all going after documentation, FOIA requests that they can submit following the breadcrumbs that are revealed in this document. So 1:30 to 3, continued discussions, topics to consider, networks to share Five Eyes UAP reporting. Well, Australia doesn't have any reporting in place. So again, what are they going to be able to bring to the table on those discussions? Reporting at an unclassified level, a secret level that relates to the Five Eyes, and TSSITK-REL. What the hell does that relate to? And as it relates to the Five Eyes. Let's come back to that in just a moment. Another bullet point, topics to consider when we're talking about this UAP collaboration way ahead plan: need for shared databases showing known objects using various sensors. That's an interesting one. What database has Australia got to offer? Five Eyes UAP collection planning. Again, what is Australia going to be able to offer on that front? Future meeting schedule, how often, virtual or in person? Now, I reached out to Susan Goff. Just see if I've got that. I'll show that. Yeah, I'll show that in a short while. I reached out to Susan Goff to see if I could get some commentary on the future meeting schedule. So I'll dive into that in just a moment. Other Five Eyes forums to be into, i.e., means emerging and disruptive technologies. So that's an interesting, and then you've got some B6 information that is redacted for the privacy of the individuals that are displayed there. I'm not too sure. Maybe that is, Five Eyes attendees, possibly. I really don't know. So what is this TSSI-TK-REL 5 FVEY? Let me pull up for you. So I'll pull up a really good document. There's a wonderful researcher on Reddit. It goes by the handle of Harry_is_white hot, who I interviewed on the Unexplained Rundown in August of last year with Bill Chalker and Ross Coulthart. So if you want to have a look at that interview, feel free. But this was a really good Reddit article that he put out not long ago that gives a breakdown of what those acronyms are, because I had no idea what they related to. So let me just go through them. So TS that you saw in that document, that agenda, relates to top secret. Obviously, that's a classification level, information that would cause grave damage to the United States government if it was disclosed without authorization. SI relates to special intelligence, sometimes sensitive compartmentalized information. So we know what SCI pertains to. Control systems, everything is compartmented. I don't have anything specifically on special intelligence, though. This is the key one, though. TK, I had no idea what talent keyhole, TK represents talent keyhole. So what is talent keyhole? This control system is for products of overhead collection systems such as satellites and reconnaissance aircraft, and contains compartments which are identified by a classified code word. The original talent compartment was created in the mid-1950s for the U-2 spy plane in 1960. It was broadened to cover all national aerial reconnaissance, and the keyhole compartment was created for satellite intelligence. The term talent keyhole was declassified in 1988. So that just gives you a sense as to what those acronyms are. Now, following that information, let me just pull up Twitter here for you. So I then, once I received this document, I put it out there. I put it out in public, basically revealing this document to the world. And I mean, you know, I was never expecting a release to get as many views as it did. 255,000 people have viewed this document, or this tweet, I should say. So it was very, very significant in that respect. So I obviously posted this to X on the 18th of June, you know, very shortly after I received the documents. Nick Pope, who those in the UFO community will know, this just shows you the significance of the document when folks like Nick Pope and others are saying, you know, great work, with him providing some commentary on the UK side. It's likely, but by no means certain, that the UK representative came from Defense Intelligence capability assessments. Defense Intelligence is interesting because we can say with a high degree of confidence that the Defense Intelligence Organization in Australia was represented. Which is a part of the Ministry of Defence's intelligence staff. So just nice to get some supporting commentary from Nick Pope on that one. Shortly after I put that tweet out, my good friend John Greenwald Jr. over at the Black Vault reached out to me, and he asked if I would mind if he put together a brief article on the release. So, and you can read this as is linked in the show notes below. So on the 18th of June, if you want to download the FOIA documents and the initial request, you can. John goes into some brief detail of you know, what the significance is of this document, kind of an abbreviated version of what I'm going through. There are a few bits and pieces that I haven't touched on that John has. So if you want to have a read of the article that he put together, you know, feel free. Again, it's linked in the show notes below. And then we have, you know, other folks in the community that are commenting on this document. If I pull up for you another one that we know well in the community, I'll pull up this quote tweet from Ross Coulthart. So he quote tweeted my post. He said, "There's nothing in this UAP nonsense, of course. So why is the security classification for US shared UAP intelligence with Australia up to top secret, talent keyhole, which is satellite and sensor system imagery? This revealing FOI from Grant Lavac shows UAPs are protected among the Five Eyes by the highest TS, top secret SCI classification. But of course, there's nothing to it. And that is true because Reddit user Harry_is_white_hot has indicated to me that TSSITK relevant to the Five Eyes is about as high as it gets for intel that's shared among the Five Eyes nations. So if there's nothing to the UAP topic, why is it potentially going to have reporting? If we pull up again that document, if I go to the other one, networks to share UAP reporting across top secret and sensitive information and talent keyhole. If it's all drones and weather balloons and there's nothing to it, why is it got that level of classification? Now, it could well be that if AARO and the Five Eyes are having all of these discussions about future collection systems, sensors that they're using, satellite technology, we know that there are some pretty cool toys that the US and more than likely, Australia has the Jindalee over the horizon radar. It has Cyber Systems space-based infrared system, which feeds satellite data to Pine Gap, and then that's relayed to Space Force bases in the United States. There's the Space Science Telescope in Western Australia or South Australia, one of the others. And Ministry of Defence has obviously got some pretty cool capabilities as well. So just an interesting point from Ross saying, well, why is it given this such high classification if there's really nothing to the UAP topic? Yeah, I've lost my mouse here, so I'm going to have to close this one manually. Oh, there it is. Bugger. Okay, so let me come back. So Ross obviously put that tweet out, and there were the others that supported, echoed Ross's sentiments. If I pull up another tweet for you, this is one that was put out by, play this for you, a great researcher on X, TP Loft 2008. If we need to ask, should Five Eyes UAP reporting on a top secret talent keyhole system when details/imagery regarding the decommissioning of a Chinese spy balloon is unclassified, what is it that we're really dealing with? And he raises a very, very good point. So again, that kind of echoes the sentiments that that Ross said, and he actually responded to Ross's tweet saying, yeah, agreed. Why is there a need to determine the reporting of balloons in a top secret special intelligence talent keyhole environment? So it's a good question. Daniel Otis, who's again done some great reporting out of Canada. Again, this just kind of shows you the significance of this document. He quote tweeted it as well, and I don't show you this to impress you, but really just to hit home that this document has been making some waves in the public domain, certainly on social media. Daniel writes on the 19th of June, excellent new doc discovery from Grant Lavac with more details on a Five Eyes UAP meeting held at the Pentagon in May 2023, which I previously wrote about for CTV News, which we covered at the front end of this show. So that kind of gives you a sense as to how serious folks are responding to and taking this document seriously. Again, it's just an agenda document, but it certainly does reveal a lot of interesting information. And a few of you agree. Aaron Ross is right. Harry Bridges, well done, great work. Thank you, Harry. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining. So let's now kind of, as we come to wrapping things up, folks. I know I've been yapping away for a very long time, and this is a long stream, so we want to try and wrap this up as soon as we can. Let me come to, just going to close down. I think this is the one. There we go. Whoops. So following the release of that meeting agenda for the Five Eyes inaugural UAP Caucus Working Group meeting, I decided to reach out to Susan Goff. And I sent her an email on the 20th of June. So a couple of days after I received that document back through FOIA, I said, "Hi, Sue, hope this follow-up email finds you well." Actually, sorry, let me go back to the original one. On the 19th of June, so the day after, I think. "Hi, Sue, hope this email finds you well. Following the release of FOIA 23F1049 attached for your reference, I thought I'd take this opportunity to get in touch regarding the Five Eyes FVEY UAP Caucus Working Group. At your convenience, could you kindly comment by way of response to the following questions? How many times has the Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group convened since the inaugural meeting held on the 24th of May? How frequently does it convene? How does the working group convene? Is it in person or virtually? And when is the next working group meeting scheduled for? Your responses would be greatly appreciated." So that was on the 19th of June. Now, I had to wait a couple of days before I got a response from Sue. So rather than waiting around, on the 20th of June, I got a document back from a FOIA request that I submitted to the Australian Department of Defence. Now, this was going after emails that that were in the lead up. I think it was emails that were associated with the Chief of Air Force brief that I secured for release, the February 2024 version of the CAF, the Chief of Air Force brief. And this email just shows some correspondence pertaining to that Chief of Air Force brief from leading up to the Senate estimates. So this was an email sent on Monday, the 12th of February of this year, a copy of Chief of Air Force Senate estimates brief specifically on UAP. Good afternoon, someone, whoever it's been sent to. Further to my telephone conversation with redacted. Now, S7, again, is exempt because of an intelligence organization. So I suspect this is an email that's sent to someone in the Defense Intelligence Organization. Further, my telephone conversation with someone this afternoon, please find attached Chief of Air Force Senate estimates brief for the February 24th on UAP UFO. On return, Chief of Air Force is urgently seeking from, I suspect that is DIO, Defense Intelligence Organization, seeking from DIO any information, reports, dot points, etc., available ASA. I think that's as soon as. I'm not too sure what the ASA is. Someone maybe can fill me in on the acronym, from the US AARO Five Eyes Forum on UAP held in May 2023. That is the subject of two questions on notice that were obviously the ones that we've talked about, where the Australian Department of Defence said, no, we didn't attend. Oh, crap. No, we did. So Chief of Air Force is now scrambling to find out what the hell is going on, because you've got these conflicting messages that's coming out of the Australian Department of Defence. And the Chief of Air Force is now the one that's is going to potentially bear the brunt of it, because he's the lead on UAP. Please see attached. I understand that S7, I suspect DIO, is compiling information for CAF to speak to, and also as background information. Can you please advise when CAF may expect this information? So Chief of Air Force getting a little bit nervous that there's conflicting information that's being put out there. The Canberra Times is picked up on the story and saying Australia ignored the meeting, and then they're saying they denied attending, but they did go. So this was a response to that email, 12th of February. Again, it's gone, request for information, sponsored by, response by, so I mentioned that's intelligence agency. Good afternoon, ma'ams. So I'm not sure who it's to. In keeping with the style as provided in, I imagine DIO's response attached. I've prepared a one-pager on the response timeline for the 2 separate questions on notice received. I can provide further information if necessary. So all this here you can see that's redacted S7, pretty significant. I imagine that is a summary for the Chief of Air Force, just an abbreviated summary of some of the key takeaways from AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus working group meeting. Now, we're never going to see that information because it's in the holdings of the intelligence agency, potentially, more than likely, the Defense Intelligence Organization, which is exempt from FOIA. Now, Senator Whish-Wilson, can he get a look at this information? Quite possibly, if he has the necessary clearances or the ability to look at this information as a participating member for the Senate estimates for the portfolio of defense, foreign affairs, and trade. That remains to be seen, but I've alerted him to this information, and hopefully he will be able to at least get some eyes on it, because it's important that, you know, those that elected representatives that need to have budget oversight should be asking questions of defense leadership. If there's the potential for an investigatory body to be implemented in Australia for UAP, he should be all over that. He should be aware of what is being discussed. So that's my 2 cents anyway. Harry Bridges says, crazy to think that it took until February 24 this year to try and find out anything in answer to the question from a senator. Yeah, I agree. So, you know, it's ridiculous, the stonewalling and the amount of time that it takes to get anything out of defense. And that's why I've been pushing hard for, you know, these FOIA requests, just to get some breadcrumbs that can reveal some information. So that was that document that came out of that FOIA request. Let's come back to the email from Sue Goff. So this is the email that I sent to Sue Goff, again with those questions, on the 19th of June. She didn't reply, so I kind of reached out again the following day saying, look, you know, this is pretty significant stuff. Can you please provide comment? Sue on the 21st said, currently away from the office, should have a response for you soon. 21st, thanks, Sue. I look forward to receiving your commentary. So 25th of June, from Sue Goff. Grant, AARO held its first Five Eyes working group in May 2023 and continues to discuss areas of mutual interest and concern related to UAP with its Five Eyes partners. AARO is committed to working with allies and partners in an open sharing environment to identify and resolve UAP sightings. Well, that's great, but you didn't even answer a single question that I asked. Classic Susan Goff response, a non-answer. And I've come to accept that that's pretty much the way that responses will be put out there. Again, is that you can get the same with the Australian Department of Defence. Remember the response that they gave Brandy Vincent and me. The Australian Department of Defence does not have a reporting or a recording protocol for UAP. It's all strategic narrative. They're selling you a story that they want you to buy and not continue to bother them and ask questions. And it's so frustrating. That's why I'm so appreciative that there are folks like Daniel Otis, John Greenwald Jr., Brandy Vincent, Ross Coulthart, there are Christopher Sharp. There are guys out there that are pressing their governments on what it knows and when it knew it on UAP, and in our case in Australia, why Australia is so lacking in its engagement on the topic and not taking it seriously like our US ally. So the frustration continues, but good to see that, a few days after, obviously, this document came out, our good friend Christopher Sharp over at the Liberation Times put out an article on this document, and obviously quoted me in the article, which was great to see, and linked my tweet. So it's a good read. I've linked it in the show notes below. If you haven't read that article from the Liberation Times, do give it a look-see, because it is an interesting one. And this is the one that I really wanted to share with you. So a follow-up article done by our good friend Jamison Murphy of the Canberra Times. This is only recent. This is on the 28th of June. So 26th of June, Liberation Times put that article out. 28th of June, Canberra Times comes out with an article. Australia discussed UFO collection planning with US in secret meeting. So again, we're really getting under the skin of the Australian Department of Defence. 3 articles in less than in less than a year, calling out the Australian Department of Defence complete lack of communication and clarity on this topic. And Jamison, to his credit, he's refusing to give defence a free pass on this issue. And this is what's so frustrating. Other people should be asking these sorts of questions that Jamison's asking. Sunrise Breakfast Show, Today Breakfast Show, they get the PM and the deputy PM and folks that are in positions of authority and leadership within the government defence on their breakfast shows. They should get off their fat ass and exercise a shred of journalistic due diligence and ask these questions that I'm asking and that Jamison's asking and that Ross Coulthart's asking and that Chris Sharp are asking, that Daniel Otis and John Greenwald Jr. and folks in New Zealand as well. So the Australian mainstream media, unfortunately, has still got its head up its ass and buried in the sand on this topic. Now, this article just came out, so for your benefit, I am going to, because it is behind a paywall, I want to kind of give those who have not had an opportunity to read this article. I'm going to put in the description the archive web link, so you can bypass the paywall altogether if you do want to read it. But I'm going to read it now, so you don't have to go through that process. So the article that Jamison put out on, again, 27th of June, I had 28th of June, sorry, it's 27th of June. Australia discussed UFO collection planning with US in secret meeting. Australian defence officials met with their United States counterparts to discuss unidentified anomalous phenomena collection planning documents released under Freedom of Information Act show. The meeting was held at the Pentagon in May 2023 and involved the so-called Five Eyes, US, Australia, Canada, UK, New Zealand, to brief the alliance about UAPs, the modern term for UFOs. The Australian Defence Force previously denied attending the briefing. However, the agenda released by the US government shows the Five Eyes Alliance met for a caucus working group to cultivate shared awareness of allies' UAP issues, detection and mitigation activities and challenges. The allies discussed the need for networks to share Five Eyes UAP reporting, including documents marked top secret and special intelligence. The intention is to develop a framework for future UAP collaboration, one document said. The document also highlighted the need to share databases showing known objects using various sensors. It's unclear if the UAP collection planning discussion was related to the collection of data or crashed craft. It should be noted the term UAP can apply to objects such as drones or the Chinese surveillance balloon, which caused an international incident when it flew over the US and Canada and was subsequently shot down in early 2023. In November, it was reported a wing of the CIA, the Office of Global Access, coordinated retrieval of crashed UAPs around the world. The briefing flagged. It's interesting that they put that in there. I think that was probably pulled from the Daily Mail and Liberation Times. Interesting inclusion. The briefing flags sharing talent keyhole data, which is among the USA's most highly classified data and refers to the information collected by satellite, spy planes, and other sensor data. Each country, including Australia, presented their allies with an update on their latest internal UAP information. The meeting closed with a conversation about the future UAP meeting scheduling, along with talks about what other Five Eyes forums the issue could be tied into, such as emerging and disruptive technologies. Australian Defence Force quiet on UAPs. The Australian Defence Force has refused to officially acknowledge any interest in the subject and says it does not collect UAP reports, as there was no scientific or other compelling reason to continue to devote resources to the recording and investigation of unidentified aerial phenomena. ACM, publisher of this masthead, asked Defence Minister Richard Marles if Australia had discussed sharing UAP data and reports or UAP collaboration plan with its allies. So a really good article. Again, great to see Jamison Murphy carrying the torch and, you know, doing his homework and due diligence, leveraging background information that the likes of myself and Ross are able to provide him, and obviously share documentation. So I'm hopeful that Jamison will continue to report on UAP in Australian context and challenge and press the Australian Department of Defence on their lack of interest and engagement on the issue. Last tweet that I want to show you before we wrap up, because I know we've been going for an incredibly long period of time here, is one that I was not expecting, but I was pleasantly surprised to see. If I just pull this up for you. Give me 1 second there, folks. Try and find it here. Here it is. There we go. I wasn't expecting to see this, but I was pleasantly surprised when I did. So Christopher Mellon, who we all know, those of us that follow this topic, tweeted the FOIA release that I pushed out. I am often asked whether the US is collaborating with its allies on the UAP issue. New information received through the FOIA process confirms that this is the case, at least with respect to Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, who are signatories to an old and important intelligence sharing agreement. Japan has also indicated it is in contact with the US on the UAP issue. This is genuine progress. Hopefully, the new AARO director will continue to improve collection analysis while taking decisive steps to address public and congressional concerns about a lack of trust and transparency. So a bit of a dig at AARO there, but it is promising because it is good to see that there is now engagement across the Five Eyes on this topic. Now, to what degree the Australian Department of Defence starts to take this topic seriously, along with the Defence Intelligence Organisation, it is hard to say. So let me pull up a couple of your comments that you've made. Harry Bridges, if Sugoff says the discussions continue, who are they talking to here if the CAF doesn't seem to know anything about it? It's a very good question. Is it limited to just the intelligence services? Why is it limited to just the intelligence services? Aaron comments, Sunrise Today and ABC Breakfast are jokes of programs, the same with the project. I agree. It's all about fluff. They just want views for their advertising revenue. RAAF Advance Australia, that's fair. Harry Bridges goes on to say, who is the UAP guy here in Australia? Who is the contact here that Sugoff says AARO is in ongoing discussions with? It's a good question. I'm trying to source information through FOIA that may shed some light on that very question. What information are we sharing if the ADF keeps saying they don't collect any information? Exactly. That is the key question. Again, what did we have to bring to the table and offer at those discussions at the UAP Caucus working group if we are not collecting any data and we don't have any reporting protocols and we haven't done anything since 1996? So many questions. Now we need the answers. We certainly do. Last document I want to share with you folks. This is the most recent FOIA request that I have received back. 47, it is this one. So this was, I was going after the emails for Defense Space Command. And so this is, I'm going to go to page 3. I'll start here. So 14th of November. This again sheds some light for us, or kind of gives you an insight into the scrambling that's happening within the Department of Defence, Royal Australian Air Force, Defence Space Command, as to just what the hell is going on. Did we attend? Did we not attend? Again, this is 14th of November of last year, before the Department of Defence formally admitted that we did attend the UAP Caucus Working Group. So 14th of November, the subject heading is, it's relating to a question I noticed Australia's attendance at the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office Five Eyes Forum on UAP. Good afternoon, someone. UKCANFR, I don't know the acronym, someone might know in the chat. Section has been tasked to respond to the question on notice regarding Australia's attendance at the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, Five Eyes Forum on UAP. In plain English, the Pentagon's UFO program. The question on notice is asking two questions Air Force may have the answers to. Did Defense receive an invitation? So again, this is kind of the correspondence is going internally that led up to the response that the Department of Defense provided that, oh yes, a defense representative in Washington attended the Five Eyes Forum. So they're wanting to get clarity on, they're asking around, did Defense receive an invitation from the AARO office to attend the inaugural Five Eyes Forum in May? They've redacted Sean Kirkpatrick's name there, not too sure why. If yes, for what reason did Defense decide Australia as a Five Eyes member not attend the forum? Who has final decision on attendance? So those were the questions on notice that your member, Senator Wish Wilson, had submitted on the 2nd of November. If possible, grateful for your assistance with this question on notice due kind of by close of business 16th of November. So response, that was sent on the 14th of November. Response on the 15th of November. Good morning, sir, ma'am. BLUF, per question on notice, have your officers received an invitation on behalf of Air Force from the US All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to attend the Five Eyes Forum on UAP Lavac? RAAF, is it IE? Can't see what that is. RAAF are not aware of any invitation being received by Air Force. So, you know, obviously, if it is DIO, Defense Intelligence Organization, that's attending, they're not talking to RAAF when they should be and sharing this information, because the Chief of Air Force is going to be the one that's got egg on his face when he's asked these questions. Follow-up email, respond 15th of November. This is cross-copy to the Office of the Defense Space Commander. This is from a Flight Lieutenant, Staff Officer, Commander, Defense Space Command. Hi, sir. Defense Space Command did not receive an invitation to the AARO UFO Forum. We received a FOIA request earlier this year, so 338, on the same topic, and we referred this to Air Force as Defense Space Command had nil involvement. So, you know, they're talking about 338, which, if we go back, you know, that's as far back as 338. When did I submit that request? I'll just pull this up. That was on the 9th of October of last year. So again, you know, this whole non-explanation from the Australian Department of Defence as to why the conflicting messages, no, we didn't attend, yes, we did attend. There's still no sufficient or satisfactory answer that they have provided to date. And again, you can just see throughout the course of this episode tonight, this show, how many attempts have been made, not just by myself, not just by Senator Wish Wilson, but journalists such as Brandy Vincent, such as Jamison Murphy, obviously of the Canberra Times. And Defence can still not get their shit together and figure out what's going on. So again, either there is this massive level of lack of due diligence and competence being played internally, doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence in our defence and those that we those that are in positions of authority, and again, doesn't instill much confidence for our elected representatives if they're asking questions of folks in government or defence. How can they expect to receive a truthful and accurate answer the first time round when we've clearly shown through this, to quote Ross Coulthart, always assume a screw up before a conspiracy? There is clearly a screw up in this whole debacle. Whether there's a conspiracy, that could play part of it as well. Non-human intelligence, thank you for your comments, my friend. Carl Extra, 100% obfuscation. Again, I'm not ruling that out. I think there's some truth there. Good FOIA work, Grant. Thanks for sharing this info, mate. Appreciate your comments. And look, that is everything that I wanted to walk you through this evening, folks. I know this has been an epic session, but I really wanted this to be a comprehensive deep dive so that anyone that is new to this topic and wants to know what the hell Australia is doing or not doing can watch this show and see where we've come from the 31st of May of last year, and even before that, the July of 2022, where Royal Australian Air Force said, "Oh, Five Eyes is not the appropriate platform for engagement on UAP." Look where we are today, all the way to where we are now, and we know that AARO's Five Eyes Forum on UAP was officially designated the Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group. And I look forward to seeing what future information I can bring to light with my friends and colleagues around the globe, John Greenwald Jr., Daniel Otis, Christopher Sharp. There are others in New Zealand as well. So as always, I will keep you up to date and informed. So that's everything I wanted to cover off on, folks. I really appreciate you staying with me. Hopefully you'll come back and join me on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do give it a like, share, subscribe. Hit me up with your comments in the comment section below. Interested to learn your thoughts from today. And enjoy your day, your evening, your graveyard shift, wherever you're calling from. Signing off for now. Look forward to seeing you again on a future episode of the Unexplained Rundown. So thanks for joining.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.